regular meeting of the Loveland Board of Education to order at 6 p.m. and ask Mr. Giuffre for a roll call.
Mr. Daugherty.
Here.
Reverend Eilert.
Here.
Dr. Lorenz.
Here,
Dr. Schwetzino.
Here.
Mrs. Washburn.
Present.
all present. The first item is the adoption of the board agenda. I'd like to move to adopt the agenda with a slight change, moving the recognition portion up right after the Pledge of Allegiance. So we have 3 pieces to the recognition, and then we will have hearing of the public after that. So that would be my motion.
Second.
And I have Mrs. Washburn seconding. Any other discussion or questions about the agenda? All right, Mr. Giuffre, can we vote on that?
Dr. Lorenz.
Yes.
Mrs. Washburn.
Yes.
Mr. Daugherty.
Yes.
Reverend Eilert.
Yes.
Dr. Schwetzino.
Yes.
Motion carried. The first item on the agenda is approval of minutes. We have minutes from April 19th. Is there a motion to approve those minutes?
Moved.
Second.
Mrs. Washburn moved and Mr. Doherty seconded. Any questions, suggestions, corrections to the minutes? Seeing none, Mr. Giuffre, can we vote on that?
Mrs. Washburn.
Yes.
Mr. Daugherty.
Yes.
Reverend Eilert.
Yes.
Dr. Lorenz.
Yes.
Dr. Schwetzino.
Yes.
Motion carried. Now we'd like to welcome our guests, and it's amazing to have a front row of guests and such distinguished guests as well. Although someone came in tonight and said, so is this the going away party? And I said, no, it's not the going away party. This is the start of something new party. So anyway, we're very glad to have you in the front row. Then we have a whole row of other folks who are going to present to us and be recognized for work that they've done. And we're also going to recognize our student reps this time. Did we hear that Austin is coming in?
Good luck.
Somebody go let our rep in. Okay, so we'll have him here when it's time. Anyway, welcome to all of you. And then to all of the folks who are behind all of this first group of people being recognized. We're also glad you're here this evening too. So would you please rise and join with us in the Pledge of Allegiance? I pledge
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which stands one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. And since we did make a slight change to the agenda, the first item on the retirement recognition, Mr. Collier has something to say first.
Good evening, everybody. I'm Garth Collier, the Human Resources Director for the district. And it is a really special night tonight. And for those retirees that were able to be here tonight with us, and as you can see, we have a slideshow here behind us with all of our retirees, their years of service, and then a kind of a special note from their supervisor or principal that's been working with them for all these years. I don't want to take up too much time. I just want to thank all of you for all of your dedicated service to our schools and to our community, and to our staff and just Loveland as a whole. And I am proud to be able to officially be the first person to kind of like officially thank you for your years of service. And we could have a round of applause for them, please. And at this time, I'm going to turn it over to Dr. Lorenz.
Again, thank you all for being here. I think Garth told me that there are actually 13 folks who are retiring this year being recognized, and they are not all here this evening, but if you add their years of service, I think it comes to 299 years. So that's a lot of service to Loveland School District. I know there's at least one person sitting here who has taught here for 34 years, and I don't know that there's anybody in that row that looks like they're a whole lot older than 34 years old. So that's pretty strange too. Anyway, I don't know how that happened. I do know that to retire in the teacher's retirement system, you can get lots of years of service in, like as a summer worker before you, yeah, that must be what happened. So at any rate, we are very proud to be able to honor these folks. And so each of our board members has a plaque. And so when I call the retiree's name, if they would come up and if the board member would come up to hand out that plaque and shake hands and get some pictures taken, and we will just all be happy to send you on your new beginnings. And as Garth said, folks, information is up here on the board. So that'll give you years of service, some quotes from people who have known these folks over the years. And so you can see that scrolling through as we go through. The first retiree to be recognized is from the Board of Education office, and that's Becky Clark. And Dr. Swetchnow has her plaque. So Becky, if you come up. You need a photo op, right?
Photo op, I'm ready. She's like,
We got dressed up for you.
Oh,
oh, okay, great.
all right. Our second recognition, second retiree is from the Transportation Department, and that's Jennifer Knipp. And Eileen has her plaque.
Enjoy.
Where's Judy McDaniel? I think no, okay. We had actually 4 folks retiring, 4 bus drivers retiring, and Jennifer is representing them well this evening. And if anybody in the audience would like to get their CDL, now is the chance. We need bus drivers. So from our custodial staff, we had a retiree, but he is not greater. From LECC, Kathy Hosier has retired, but she is not here this evening. And then from Loveland Elementary School, we need Dr. Swetchnow again. He has Cindy Rack's plaque. Cindy Rack's plaque. Thank you so much. That's okay. That's all right. Neither one of you look more than 34 years old. And Cindy is the one who has 34 years of Loveland. That's just amazing and wonderful, and that she still looks so young and so sane. It's just wonderful. From the intermediate school, we have 3 folks retiring, but we just have 2 here this evening. Next one is Steve Fetterman, and Reverend Eilert has Steve plaque. And Steve was a science teacher. Cindy was a 3rd grade teacher. Mentioned the placement they had. And then Joyce Muthig is an intervention specialist, and Eileen, you have her plaque. Joyce, if we need a board intervention, we'll call you. I know that's not that kind of, never mind. Then from the high school, we have 2 retirees, and Dave Volkman is not here this evening, but Beth Weck is. She was a work and family life teacher. And so Beth, Mr. Doherty has your plaque. Again, we thank you for all those years of service. We will let you leave in just a couple minutes. While I'm up here, I think I will recognize our student reps, if that's okay. Mr. Broadwater has recognition for them. I was able to go to the senior awards night the other night, and Nicole Pedicini had several different awards, but I was able to present her a certificate from the board for her service as a senior, as our student rep. And then Austin Smith is here this evening as well. Both of them have served us very well this year, and we would like to give them just token appreciation for being our student reps. Mr. Broadwater?
Thank you. And I too would like to say thank you. I've always enjoyed our conversations in some of the lengthy board meetings, and I appreciate you hanging out with us. I also want to say congratulations to our retirees. I'm glad I got to meet all of you in my first year, and I'll certainly remember. So congratulations. And to Austin, thank you very much for all you do. I know both of you are extremely busy and you take time to do this, and it's much appreciated. So I'm going to give you this beautiful Loveland pen and pencil set. Nicole, I believe you get to take this to Duke University. Is that correct?
Thank you so much.
And Austin, I believe you get to take this to Loveland High School. Is that where you? Thank you.
Thank you. And I will let our retirees know we won't make you sit there through the whole meeting there in the front row. We are going to recognize the Hope Squad next if you'd like to stay for that, but they are right behind you. So if you feel like you'd like to get up and move and you feel like you'd not like to stay for our whole meeting, we appreciate your service and we won't make you serve us any. Thank you.
Thanks.
Now that they're all leaving, I didn't say thank you to all their family and friends who were here. They are here this evening to recognize them. I'm sure their support through their years of service is what helped them make it through all those years as well. So we appreciate that. Mr. Broadwater, are you up for Hope Squad?
I am. So before I introduce Hope Squad and our mentors and our students, a little bit about Hope Squad. What is Hope Squad? Hope Squad is a peer-to-peer evidence-based program that works within our schools to reduce the stigma around mental health and suicide. Hope Squad members are trained to identify at-risk students, provide friendship, and seek help from an adult. And so obviously, it is a very important role that all of you serve, and we appreciate you doing it so very, very much and doing it so well and helping each other out and your classmates out as well. It's important and we appreciate it. I want to start with Mrs. Rachel Freeman Hicks, who is from the high school. And Rachel, I'll turn it over to you. Stand at the podium there.
I do want to add just one thing for anyone who's not familiar with Hope Squad. Everyone you see here was nominated by their peers, and that's how you become a Hope Squad member. We do a nomination process. We ask the student body to nominate students who they feel like they would go to, they need someone to talk to, and that's how all of the students here. So it's a huge honor for them to be chosen by their peers as the people that others would go to. So I'm the school psychologist at Loveland High School. I have two other advisors who could be Jamie Gordon, she's a school counselor, and Ken Reed, who is our psychology teacher. So we do it all together. We have 40 total members at the high school, 10 in each grade, about 10 in each grade level. And I am going to let you all introduce yourself. You can stand up maybe and say your name. Great, you guys could be recognized. You've already been recognized. Do you want to start though?
My name is Nicole Bettesini and I'm a senior.
Perfect. Start with Allie, and then I think you guys are all sort of around here, right? Okay.
I'm a freshman. I'm Liam Amy, I'm a freshman.
Emma, she's right.
I'm Maddie Freeman, I'm a sophomore. I'm busy.
I'm Maddie Preston and I'm
Is that all my high schoolers that are here? All right, perfect. I am now going to turn it over to Dan Burke, psychologist at the middle school, and I will let her come up to introduce her school Hope Squatters. You can turn it over to
Since you guys are here, who's brave? Let's try it. Brave enough to start? Okay. I'm from the How big is the class? I need Wow, what a fabulous job. And I'm not in person on this. And again, all of these guys were nominated by.
Thank you, Mitch.
Thank you very much, and thank you for the service that you perform for all of the students of Loveland. It really is an amazing job, an amazing, brave, and very helpful thing that you do for us. So we appreciate that. Okay, board members, anything?
Important work. Thank you all.
Thank you. Thank you for being here. We also will not make you stay for the rest of our meeting. You are welcome. But we also understand that, this lovely night in May, you have other things you might need to be doing. So thank you. Take a cookie on your way out.
Matt, grab it.
Hearing of the public.
Yeah.
I'll let them get out.
Yeah, go ahead.
Pardon? Yes. Do we have just one person? Just one person? Okay. All right. Hopefully they will take some of those cookies on their way out.
I have a feeling they will.
And we do appreciate their service. We are now moving back.
Good about that? Are you feeling good about that?
No,
It'll be fine. It'll work.
I think like in general, most of the people that go there are similar to me, so I think it'll be okay.
Even getting somebody who's different is okay. Like my freshman year roommate was from the Bronx. It was Italian, like nothing like us at all.
Yeah.
But it was a great like eye opener for that
Yeah.
reason. Because it's like, okay, well, tell me about Ohio.
Yeah. They have to fill out like a little survey.
Right.
Are you messy?
Does anybody say
And,
yes?
and are you messy, Nicole? We're ready to move back into our meeting.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right. Are you messy? Are you-
My mom thinks.
Oh, okay. All right. All right. Well, just a little housekeeping here. All right, thank you. And we'll now move back in the agenda to the hearing of the public portion. And I do appreciate Mr. Pauly. He has signed up to speak this evening, and he suggested as well that we do the recognitions first. It's also probably because he couldn't see us, all those people are in front of him. But I think that that's the only signature. Is that correct, Mr. Dufresne? So Mr. Pauly, if you'll come up and address the board. I think you know the procedure. There's a 3-minute time to address the board, and we'll appreciate hearing from you.
Thank you. I have the plea like I had last time is about CRT. And you may or may not be teaching CRT in your school, but still I have to make this plea for people that I know, people who have kids, grandkids, etc. So as you remember, I requested last meeting that we stop all teaching of political, racial, and sex ed topics and get back to teaching only the basics. Today's education is now being called contentless education. There's nothing in it. By Bill Ayers, who developed this. It's a little bit of history. So my requests are similar to others at other board meetings, such as the Colorado one, where both Black and white parents were giving detailed reasons to stop CRT. Asians are now coming out in force to demand that we stop it as well, and to allow for advanced classes, which were taken away for equity reasons. In other words, American parents across the boards are demanding what I am tonight. So we may say that we're not teaching CRT, and many schools will tell you that, and they'll ask you for proof if you say you are. I'm not going to go there. But there is a website called Protect Ohio's Children, where anonymous calls are recorded. If there's any reporting of CRT or sexual incidents concerning the CST courses. Just up the street, we had an unfortunate incident where Goshen superintendent was arrested for making inappropriate contacts with an 11-year-old. Milford schools, the parents were adamant about the 10th grade porno book that was discovered in the library was being assigned. They demanded that book being taken out. And so therefore you can see that it's around us. I hope it's not here in Loveland. I think Loveland's probably better than that. I've seen the kids here tonight. They're all great kids. I think a lot of the board members, I know some of you. So anyway. So like the black guy said in so many words at the Colorado School Board, there would be no racial problems if schools weren't causing it. And what he means is CRT is divisive and it causes, I'm sorry. Okay, anyway, tomorrow night I have to go to the Loveland 5-year strategic planning meeting. And I'm hoping to hear from them that we'll be doing more basics than CRT, SEL, CASEL, CSE, whatever you want to call them. So I'm hoping that Loveland is heading in that direction. If not, they're not likely to get much support from the public because you can see, I see from watching the news every day, that people across America, shore to shore, are against what's happening now. So I'll conclude with that. Is that it?
Thank you, Mr. Pauly.
You're welcome.
I am not attempting to reply in any way to the things that you have said, but I do want to make one clarification.
Sure.
Because you mentioned the Goshen superintendent and
Mhm.
is not, in fact, the Goshen superintendent who is involved in anything. I really would not like it to be on our record that we had mentioned that in any way. So
Okay,
in fact, a school board member who is involved in something in the news, but not the Goshen
I
superintendent.
stand corrected. That's what we heard in the news.
Yeah,
Thank you.
I just felt that was necessary to correct that for.
Yeah, I would have wanted a response from the school board on CRT, but I don't know if my time is up. I need to, I guess, sit down. So
Okay, thank you.
thank you for your time.
Thank you for your time.
I wanted to clarify too that Milford is not teaching porno books, nor do they have them in the library. It's a reputable book by a very reputable author in the Time of the Butterfly. And it's part of the curriculum in most high schools in Ohio. And I think classifying it or calling it porno is putting misinformation out there.
And Kathy, can I just ask, for your comments, I know that you couldn't get through them completely. Can we make sure that a copy of that, if it's available to us, is appended to the meeting tonight? Is that okay? Would it be okay with you to have your comments appended to the meeting so that we know that we've received all of them? I know that you were cut short.
It's part of the video record already, but having the written comments sometimes is useful.
You could just send it to us.
Email?
Yep. Just board@lovelandschools.
Treasurer.
Send it to the treasurer.
Well, I'm just saying, because I know that you had some things that you wanted to get through that you didn't get a chance, that you'd have the opportunity to have that in the record if you would like.
I got through most of it.
Okay,
I was gonna give you some enlightenment, but in 3 minutes, it's hard.
I
I
know.
know you guys you don't know the history where CRT comes from.
Good. Thanks for your time tonight.
Thank you. All right, if it's all right with the board, then we jump over the recognition section, which we have already done. When you come to part 3, reports, you'll see administrators are attached in board docs. Those are, I will mention for our audience, for the purpose of the board being able to review the reports of the administrators for the items that they bring to us on the agenda that we are asked to deal with this evening. So we appreciate that. And then we come to the board president report. And so I have a short report this evening. I would just like to note that I've attended many events since the last board meeting, including last evening, the Strategic Vision Community Meeting, which was held. Reverend Island attended as well last evening. And I think we had about 50 folks there who were participating. I will note that a little bit later, I'll talk about Tigers Inc. for that meeting. I've also attended the Loveland Planning and Zoning Commission meetings, which included the commission vote of 3-1 to decline to forward to City Council the special planning district plans for development of over 200 homes on the Grail property. So just to let you know that I was there and gave the school opinion that 200 homes could bring more taxes, but could also bring more children. I mentioned earlier that I attended the Senior Awards Night, where so many of our astounding students recognized, and the great amount of scholarships that have been earned by our Loveland High School seniors was reported. Our own Nicole Pedicini received many awards, kept calling her name, she's going up. She is one of the top 10 students, in fact, probably the top student in the senior class. So we will be able to see her. I'll remind the board members who are planning to attend that they should arrive at Cintas Center at least by 10:30 Saturday morning for graduation, where we get to see Nicole again. Plus, I think it's about 330 of her classmates. I also attended the 8th grade interview day at the middle school, which is a great opportunity. If you board members are asked to do that sometime, you get to interview 8th graders for jobs. They are also astounding young people, and I suspect that they will be receiving awards pretty soon in their senior year. It won't be that long before they move forward to that. I do want to comment on the work that Tigers Inc. does. I attended the opening of the new Loveland Dog Park in Kiwanis Park. Tigers Inc. was instrumental in measuring out that park, in finding out details about opening a dog park. The City Council recognized them as being in that work. I know they were also very hard at work for lots of Loveland community businesses. And in addition, Loveland Tigers Inc. ran the strategic vision community input session last evening, and they did a remarkable job gathering community input. They were really great in doing that.
I have to say, I'm not surprised.
Okay, well, I just want to take the opportunity to brag on them a little bit. Yes, I have made a comment that maybe we should just let them take over everything. They can just, we put them in charge and then they will handle it. So I will let board members know that there is policy review still underway. We're almost finished, I think, with the written review of our current policy. And there are several policies that have been forwarded to us from Neola updates, and they will be coming to the board soon for reading and adoption. We just have not gotten through them all yet. I will note that a draft of a board action calendar has been added to the board docs agenda this evening. It is under my report, under the board president report, and I believe it is currently in administrative content. It is not that there is, oh no, I'm sorry, it's under public content. So that's fine. It is an attempt at putting together all the information that board members might need to know what is coming up each month. What I would like board members to do is take a look at it, see if it is a format that makes sense to you, and see if you have any questions or any additions to that. I think there are still a few minor changes that might be needed. So perhaps we can talk about that at the June meeting, where we can get the calendar accepted and added to our board webpage. But at the very least, it is a reminder for us of the kinds of items that are going to come up each calendar month in our meetings. We did recognize student reps already, but what I would like to ask is, I believe I understand that we do now, we did not get, we had a little bit of a glitch in the application process for next year's student reps. So we do now have some. Do we have it set up for interview, or is that still yet?
We're waiting for all the applications to be submitted. We know there are, I think, 5 students that have expressed interest, but we've not yet received all of their applications.
Okay, very good. So that process is ongoing and we will get that taken. Oh. And then finally, I'll ask Reverend Eilert, did you have a report for us as legislative liaison, or do you have anything this evening to report?
No, the one thing we've been watching obviously is the House Bill 616, but at this point, it's not been assigned to committee, or there's no particular action pending relative to it. A number of districts have spoken out against Bill 616, but at this time, there is no action pending bill in the House.
Okay. Any other board members with either questions about my report or additional items to report this evening? Not seeing anything, so we will move on to our student representative to the board reports. And I think we need to ask you to come up to the podium. So, and we're going to start with Austin.
Austin might be a little slow there. Is that boot on? That's never a good thing. Yeah. Field with that boot.
So after 2 years of not being able to do so, the district held step-up days for the 4th and 2nd graders. So both grade levels were able to go visit their new buildings. Those 2nd graders got to go to LES, 4th graders got to go to LIS to visit the new building, meet the new principals and counselors, tour the building, and ask a lot of questions. LPS will be visiting all kindergarten students on May 23rd. And this is a great opportunity for students, as it will allow them to alleviate some anxiety as they make a big change. Grades K through 4 will be administering the spring map assessments during the last few weeks of May. And also the EOC, so the end of year assessments that's what we call them in high school, the end of year assessments for the younger grades for each grade level. Students in 1st through 4th grade are enjoying their spring field trips provided by the LEPTA. And these trips include Governor's Bend, Fort Ancient, Parkey's Farm, and the Cincinnati Zoo. 26 K through 2 teachers have successfully piloted the Being a Reader this year, and Being a Reader will be fully implemented across K through 2nd grade in the fall. Teachers will continue to work with help, and will also have professional development time throughout built into their schedule, so they can work with facilitators from the collaborative classroom. Preschool through 4th grade are working diligently on transition plans for students and laying out necessary foundations for general education placements to take place later this month and will be finalized in early June. Lastly, I wanted to thank all the retirees for their years of service, and I wanted to give out a shout out to Mr. Fetterman, who was here earlier. He was my 6th grade science teacher, and he was also my cross country coach, and he was the most optimistic, and he was on a personal level with all of us. And I just wanted to give him a shout out and thank him for all of his years of service. That's it.
All right, Nicole.
Okay. Before I start my usual report, I did have the opportunity to discuss with a couple of students in the high school student body a week or two ago about the critical race theory conversation that we had at a previous board meeting. And here's just a general thought that came from some of my peers. So uncomfortable subjects such as race, sexuality, and health are essential subjects in higher level courses. And these subjects remain integral parts of history and literature, among other things. So they'd request careful consideration before placing any sort of restrictions on our education. And our middle school inducted 4 members into our National Junior Honors. So congratulations to them. Student Council held our annual blood drive, which was in honor of a student diagnosed with leukemia at a neighboring school district. So we'd like to thank our students and staff for the work that they did on that. Our high school students completed AP testing, which is always 2 very stressful weeks. And we're very glad that that's over. Those results will be released in July. So congratulations to all students that completed those. We had a little end of year luau at the high school for our seniors. So there was like a duck pond where you could go bobbing for ducks. They had hula hoops, limbo. It was a great time. So thank you to the people involved in that. We had our senior award ceremony on May 3rd. And I just wanted to give a shout out to the fellow top 10, which included Sam Niger, Caden Swartz, Devin Sudd, Jonas Scarda, Lindsay Berry, Morgan Wheeler, Audrey Planner, Abby Polakowski, and Bella Dilhoff. So congratulations to them and everyone else that earned awards. On Monday, we had our senior sunrise, which is pretty informal, but a couple kids gathered at the turf in the morning. It was really wonderful. Great way to send us off. We had our final day of school today, so super excited about that. We'll have graduation practice at the high school tomorrow and actual graduation at May 21st. And I think some of you were probably speaking. I'm nervous. But that'll be on the 21st if anyone else is able to attend. And I would like to thank everyone here for the opportunity that you've given me over the past 2 years. This has been such an enriching experience for me, and I'd just like to say thank you.
Thank you. You're
Thank
going
you.
to do great things in the world.
Yeah.
Yes, best of luck at college. We appreciate more than you know the service that you've given to represent your school and the community and the district.
And your speech is going to be great. We have full
Yes.
confidence.
Yes, and after many years of teaching and being, my opinion is that if you are not nervous before you do something like that, then you're not really putting your whole self in. It's just going to be, it's just going to fall flat. So nerves are a good thing. Just embrace them. Take a deep breath and you will be wonderful.
They're your friend.
Yes. Thank you.
Thanks. Thank you both.
Great
Thank you
job.
both for this great year working with us. And look forward to maybe seeing Austin again. I don't know if he's applied, but we'll see. See what happens. All right. Anything else from the board? Not, we'll put Mr. Broadwater on the stage here. Superintendent update.
All right, it's always tough following Nicole, but I'll give it a shot. I want to say thank you again, and Austin, that means so much when you call out a teacher. That's very nice of you, and Nicole. There's a lot of activities going on, a lot of things that I know about. The duck pond, maybe it's good I don't know about that. Oh, okay, all right, we're okay, all right. But there's a lot going on. I've been able to do quite a bit. The interview day at the middle school was awesome. The individual students that I got to interview. I wish every adult in this community could work with our kids and talk to our kids and understand just how intelligent, how informed with technology now. There's not much kids don't know. It's about how to process, and our kids do such a good job with that. And I'm just very, very proud of what they've done this year. It's been a great year. So I'm going to start. I promised the board in the strategic visioning process that whether they liked it or not, every board meeting, I would update you with the strategic visioning. And what I thought I would do this evening is really review where we have been from the start to where we are now. I will tell you, I'm extremely pleased with the process. I believe that we have worked very, very hard per the Board of Education had asked that we involve the community as much as possible. It is important. It's been a priority. We've had 3 community meetings. We've had surveys. We've allowed any community member that wanted to be part of the design team to be a part of the design team. So I feel like we have been open and we've been trying to hear from the community, and we'll continue to do that. But if you remember, the initial night, the showcase night, was February 9th. We had about 50 participants. We had a couple different sessions. And what we did is reviewed the portrait of a tiger, which had been done in the prior years. And so we reviewed that with the individuals that were there. We then put a survey out to all of the stakeholders to ask for thoughts for the updating of the portrait of a tiger. We had over 500 respondents there. And then our community input session number 2, which was February 23rd, we had approximately 50 participants. We broke it up into the 4 groups, and I won't read those as you can remember those, but we did have those community sessions. And with the community session, it was agreed that the portrait of a tiger would kind of have a different look. It'd have a different name, a different look, and really break it down I keep using the KISS method as an example, but trying to keep it to where it is readable, doable, achievable, measurable, and anybody who reads it understands what we're trying to do. And sometimes in education, we add words and we make it a little more difficult than it has to be. So we want to make it very readable so that we know where we're going the next 5 years. After that, we had the design team selection. Again, like I said, anybody who volunteered was able to participate. We then started, we have approximately 120 members. We started March 10th, where Colin Lewis from Battelle for Kids, who is running the strategic visioning process, came and led that to get us started. And then April 14th, we started to formulate some of the strategic vision. Our writing teams made up of administrators and teachers have met April 19th and 27th for the first group. And then the second session, May 11th and 12th. The idea was to develop goals and strategies, and I shared those with the Board of Education and update so that you could see those. Last evening, you talk about Tigers Inc. We invited Tigers Inc. to come in and run our community input night number 3. And basically what they did was they took our draft strategic vision after the writing team. We didn't want to give them that strategic vision verbatim because our design team has not seen it yet. They'll see it tomorrow evening, but we did develop questions based on all of the topics that are on the strategic vision. They led a little bit of a design challenge. They were able to get input. We had about 41 individuals, I think, last night and had a really good discussion, and all of that input, the students, the Tigers Inc. kids, I was here at 8:30 last night, finishing up with some individuals, and they were still here typing in all of the responses. I can't tell you how proud I am of that group as well. And I know Mr. Mernan, I texted him this morning and said, please tell the kids thanks and get them some Chick-fil-A. So we were able to get them some Chick-fil-A this afternoon for helping. I don't know if that's equal payment, but we tried. But it was really, really enjoyable. Again, I think the more our adults can interact with our kids and understand we have some sharp kids that have opinions, that are informed, and we should listen to their opinions. They're driving their education. We have 2 perfect examples right here. So after last night, presenting tonight, the design team is going to meet tomorrow evening. They're going to incorporate any community feedback that we received last night that they may want to include. They're also going to get the first look at what the writing team developed. Again, I think it's really, really succinct. It's good. It's something that I think we can move forward with. And when we talk about this strategic vision, we've said it all along, it really is to find our focus areas. It's not to add all sorts of different things that cost all sorts of different money. It's let's focus, where are we going for the next 5 years? And let's take our time. Let's develop that plan. To me, any sustainable change takes 3 to 5 years. So that's where we want to go. And let's keep kids at the focus of what we're trying to do. Keep kids at the focus of what we're trying to do. So after tomorrow evening, we will then get all of the feedback from the design team. After tomorrow evening, we'll have a final draft of the strategic vision. It will be presented to the board in the board meeting June 6th, which is a special meeting that we had added. And after the board approves, we will have, the goal is Mr. Setters and the rest of the team, we will try and get it to where it is a finished product and get it out to our residents, our community, our parents, everybody that's a part of Loveland City Schools, and just show where we're going for the next 5 years. Next year, my goal would be, let's take that strategic vision. We're not looking to change a whole lot next year. We're going to look at the strategic vision. What is the focus? What are the action steps? So we'll develop a lot of the action steps next year. And then we can start to develop some sustainable change by listening to what our design team has said and the community. So with that, the strategic visioning process, what we have left, just real quick, the next steps, like I said, May 18th, we have the design team tomorrow evening. After May 18th, the writing teams are going to adjust to any of the action steps according to the input. And then June 6th is our gallery walk at the board meeting. And so we've accomplished a lot since February. I'm very, very pleased with it. And I think it's going to give us a pretty good 5-year plan as far as where we need to go with kids We'll always listen to kids. If we need to adjust, you adjust, right? But I think we're in a pretty good place with everything that we have there. So I will stop there and see if you have any questions. Yes.
Mike, maybe a little bit of a compound question, but I know the goal has been to achieve alignment across the communities that you've been working with. Maybe you could comment on how much alignment you think there has been, and secondarily, how are you dealing with dissent within the process?
Okay, so the alignment, I think the nice thing about the community meetings, it's a different population than the design team meetings for the most part. And so it has given us a pretty good cross-section of the stakeholders. We did put out quite a few signs in different places, different venues, so that individuals maybe that aren't watching us on the website or aren't getting the newsletter could see it. So last evening, the 41 of the individuals that showed up, I would venture to guess about 20 of them I had not met yet. And so I think that's a good thing. And I know Reverend Eilert was there and Dr. Lorenz, if you have different opinions, but there were individuals there I had not really met, and we had good conversations. The dissent, everybody has been very respectful. We talk about being caring, respectful, and responsible at Loveland. The conversation's been respectful. Doesn't mean there haven't been difficult conversations. There's always difficult conversations. Last evening, I can tell you our Tigers Inc. kids handled some tough questions pretty well. I was pretty proud of them. But we invite tough questions versus complacent acceptance. We're not going to get anywhere if we have people just agreeing with everything. So the kids have done a very good job. I think bringing in Battelle for Kids, Colin Lewis, has been really, really good. You can tell that this is kind of his niche, but what it's also allowed me to do is really just go around to different groups and not have people focused on me or my team, but focused on the process. And so the dissent, I have to say, really has been presented in a respectful manner, and we'll always listen. I think that's how you get better, is listening to that.
Yeah, you know, I always think we learn more from people that we disagree with, frankly, than people we're in agreement with.
I agree.
Hopefully that disagreement stretches our viewpoint. And if we're self-aware enough, you know, we respond to that, make change, and we're in a different place, a little bit of a different place. And it'd give me confidence in the quality of the product at the end of the day. If there was some reflection on, we thought this going into it, but we heard some things that made us think about it another way, right? Some maybe anecdotal things like that would at least give me confidence that we had open minds and they helped us get someplace even better. So not to answer it tonight, but as you think about communicating, well, you can if you want, but
I will tell you, I really enjoy constructive criticism, people stretching my thinking. As you mature, you realize you don't know everything, and you like to hear when it's respectful, it's received, and it can be worked on. And there are some things that not only do you stretch the thoughts, but I think it also validates where you think we should be going to. Like we have seen a lot of what Andrea Connor has really set up nicely for us with this real world applications and the internships, and people asking, how are we going to adjust the school day so that our students can do some internships? We felt like we were on the right path, but I think there was I know there was validation that's something that we need to do and focus on and figure out how to do it. But I agree 100%.
I think in terms of process too, that the process began with an open question. What do we need to be focusing on? And there was a lot of community input that went into the first things that ended up on paper. And so, you know, dissent is a different thing. That's when you've got some definitive things you've said and people know, I don't think those are the right things. And I think what the process has tried to do is say, what are the things that collectively we as a community can say, these are the things that are important for us as a district moving forward. And so last night, I didn't hear a lot of dissent. I heard a lot of questions, people saying, okay, and giving input and ideas for where we might improve and how we could improve things. But I think it's a testament to the process and leadership of the process that we're working towards a place where we can say, here are the things as a community we can all get behind. even though we might have some, minor adjustments in how we think the best strategic steps to get there. But in terms of the focus areas and the priorities, we're trying to find those things that, at least the majority of the community will be supportive of.
Yeah, so I mean, for a long time, I've struggled, I think all of us have struggled with what's the heart of Loveland. Who are we? What do we really think, et cetera, versus things that we hear along the way, right? And again, the thing I always worry about are the, I'll call it again, the dissenting views falling by the wayside because they feel disenfranchised in the process. Nobody's really listening to me kind of thing there. We may not have any of that, which is superb, right? But I'd imagine we have some. And I think it's just always healthy if we give voice to those opposing viewpoints. And we realize that not everybody is going to agree on everything. But when we embark on a strategy, on a direction, we do have a sense of where there are people that aren't necessarily in alignment. The robustness of that viewpoint, I think, is helpful to us.
The one comment I would make, and yes, I hope everybody feels like they've been heard and their input has been received. We will not please everybody nor be able to put all of that in there, but I hope people know that we have looked at every response. We've read through it. Our writing teams are staff members. I think sometimes people kind of group them together and think, well, they all think alike. Staff members don't think alike, and they live in our community. Over half of our staff live in the community. So in our writing teams, when they read through the responses, they read them differently. They saw different priorities. So it's a difficult thing to merge, and that's why you want to do it so that we can have a focus. We can say, okay, we can all agree on this for our kids. We can agree on this. You're not always going to make everybody happy, but at the end of the day, again, after the 5th year of this, I would hope we could look back and say, boy, we really did a lot for our kids. And it didn't cost, it wasn't about finances. That's not what we're here for. We always will look at finances. What does that mean? But it's about a focus. And at the end of each year, I can tell you we're going to reevaluate too. We're going to see where did we go? What do we have to adjust? Maybe we have to ask the community again or the stakeholders. But right now, I feel very good about the process.
Okay, thanks. I think you have more.
All right, I've got more. All right. Unfortunately, the next one is one I wish we did not have to do. As everybody is aware, we've really struggled this year with our driver numbers and having enough drivers for our buses. The individuals that have been driving have done an unbelievable job. Mr. Ames and his group have done a fantastic job of trying to plug all the holes. And there have been quite a few. I know our elementary schools, some of our parents felt that we had to double up routes. Some evenings I had to put out a message doubling up routes. Our concern is our driver numbers are continuing to shrink with retirement. So we had this evening, but also throughout the area, through the state, through the country, there are driver shortages. And we're trying to figure out what's the best way to deal with that. But in the meantime, what we are asking for the Board of Education to take a look at is to adjust from, we currently have a modified 2-tier system. We would like to take that to a 3-tier system of transportation, basically meaning we'll have two schools, the first tier, a school, the second tier, and then 2 schools, the third tier. And I'll show you the example of what we're talking about. But this will allow for fewer drivers to deliver the same number of students. And so with the lower driver numbers, what we were finding was if we had illnesses or somebody was out for the day, we had very few subs. This will allow for fewer drivers. Therefore, hopefully the idea is we will not have to double up routes and we'll be able to adjust with fewer drivers and we'll still provide the same transportation. And I think we provide an excellent model of transportation. So the next slide here, we are showing the times. I'm going to go down. The first column is the years 2021, 2022, which is this year. And then underneath is what we are going to be asking for next year. Second column is the AM routes. It's important to know that these times are the unload time at the school, not the start time for the school. Our principals will develop that if we move forward with this plan that we hope we can do. So AM routes at the middle school and the intermediate school, currently this year, they unload at 7:30 AM. Our ask is 7:15 AM, which is 15-minute difference. At the LECC this year, it currently is unloading at 9 o'clock. We are looking to unload at those students at 8 o'clock. That is going to be the most significant change. That is an hour difference. If you notice above, it was 15 minutes. And then the third group, the elementary school and the primary school, currently are dropped off at 8:20. Next year, the idea is they would be dropped off at 8:45. And then if you look at the third column, the PM routes, basically it's the same adjustment, right? So in the morning, if it was 15 minutes, in the afternoon, it'll be 15 minutes. So the departure time at LMS and LIS would be at 2:15 instead of 2:30. At LECC, it would be 3 o'clock instead of 4 o'clock. And at the elementary primary, it would be at 3:45 versus 3:20. So hopefully you can see it's just the same amount of time increments in the morning and in the afternoon. We realize that any time adjustment is difficult for families. For some families, it may make it easier. For some families, it may make it more difficult. It might make it easier in the morning, more difficult in the afternoon. We're not numb to that, and we know it's difficult for families to make adjustments. That is why we would like to talk about it this evening, so that we have 3 months that families can prepare. It does, and Mr. Ames, you can join in if you would like, but it does take it down. The fewer drivers that we need with this 3-tier system, and we still deliver the same transportation model. It just eases the stress to where we're not doubling up routes. The state of Ohio, if we do not provide transportation for students that are expecting transportation, there are some serious repercussions of that, and financial. So we have to make sure we are providing transportation. This allows us a little bit less stress in the morning, and in fact, be able to deliver the same model of transportation. So with that, Mr. Ames, did I miss anything that? Okay. Questions?
Can I assume that, I mean, it only makes sense to me that then the school day will be adjusted the same amount of minutes that the bus schedule is adjusted. That's what has to happen.
Sure. Yes.
And then also looking at this, each of these then gives a 45-minute window where there's a drop off, and then there's 45 minutes where there's a route that is run and kids are picked up and dropped off at the next drop off. That's essentially what's happening here. Is that right?
Mike, we've been talking about driver shortages for months now, probably a good 6+ months, I think, right? And for the benefit of the public that may be tuning in or just hearing this, this is not about money. This is, we've tried a lot of different things to find additional bus drivers, and it's been going in the wrong direction, I think would be safe to say, right?
Correct.
So it's not about necessarily, you may save some money. I wouldn't be surprised if you actually do save some money with it, but that's not the point of this exercise. Is to be able to carry the number of students, get them to school, and do it with a higher degree of reliability than we perhaps some days have been, because having to double up on a bus route with a few hours notice is tremendously disruptive to families and everybody else.
Yeah, this is not a Loveland specific issue. This is across the board, the state and the country. The thing I would say is, with the fewer drivers, it is going to add a little bit of time to our driver's day, which is not a bad thing when it comes to trying to recruit drivers as well. So you have fewer drivers, but a little bit more hours. So therefore it might help with recruitment. Obviously, this is not about saving any money. This is about being able to provide transportation. John, did you want to?
Well, I'll chime in because I kind of have a 3-part question that'll elucidate what you just said. And I apologize for not remembering these numbers off the top of my head, but I just saw them recently. we've had a precipitous decline in the number of employed bus drivers over the past decade, or probably about 14 years. Do you know off the top of your head, can you comment how many we had back in 2008 and how many we have now?
As recently as 2015, we had 65 drivers. Since that point in time, we are down. Next year, it will be between 38 and 42 drivers. And we anticipate 4 more retirees next year. Since last January, not just past a year and a half ago, we have lost 24 drivers and we have brought in 5 new drivers. And it's people are getting full-time jobs. A lot of people retiring. So it's just across the board. Nobody is unhappy with what they're doing. It's just a different world that we're living in.
And then I'll chime in with kind of a second part to that Mike referenced, which was bus driving is a part-time job. We're in a very tight labor market, and it's very easy for people to find full-time jobs that they'd like. When I was looking back at a time that there was recession, we've had more bus drivers. At a time that the economy's been strong, we've had fewer bus drivers.
Yes.
And right now we're at a year of bus drivers, and the entire time that I was able to look back on.
Yes.
How many positions does this change save? How many fewer bus drivers are we using next year versus this year by doing this?
We are planning to have 39 drivers on the road next year. 30 regular route drivers and 7 to 9 special needs drivers. So those 39 drivers, we may have 42 to start the year. So we're starting out with only 3 spare people, and we may have those retirees. So it might be very close to the edge next year. But this year we have lost, I believe, I'm going from memory, I believe we've lost 12 drivers this current year that we're in right now.
And then just to reiterate one more thing that both of you referenced that maybe everybody doesn't quite understand. When you double up on routes, what's the practical purpose? What's the practical outcome of that as far as families and disruption and kids and?
So when you double up a route, that does not mean you're putting 75 children on a bus. You are getting the bus, picking the children up, driving them to the school, unloading them right away. And then that driver will go out to another route close to that school and pick some more children up and bring them back. And that's where we notify the parents that the bus is going to be 10 to 15 minutes late because of the doubling up. And then what happens as a result of that is then each school after that, those same buses are going to be a little bit late. So it has a cumulative effect over the whole district. So if we can stay away from that, that's a great thing, but I will not guarantee that that's going to not going to happen next year, just quantities.
But the end of this year, that became a significant challenge.
Yes, once you get past the March area when everybody has the flu and is sick, the end of the year is pretty good, but during the winter months, it's impossible. And now the other thing that this is going to affect is it's going to have an effect on during the day field trips, going to all of the different farms and things, because we will have a much shorter window for the children to go out and come back. And also our athletic field trips. It's going to impact them dramatically because those buses will not be getting back. Well, they're leaving the high school or the elementary primary at 3:45. So they will not even be getting back to the bus lot till 4:15 to 4:30. And most of our athletic teams need to leave the high school at 3 to 3:30. So it's going to have an impact on that. We do have a group of people who only want to drive field trips, retired people, and they'll come in and do those, and they're happy to do that. But it is going to have an effect on everything next year. And we're not the only ones. Every school is having this same thing.
Certainly understand the necessity of this. Wondering though about what kind of discussion was had. You know, there's been lots of discussion about development of children, times that school begin and in different age groups and how that affects children differently. How did that factor in? Made think about minimizing impact upon the education of children.
That is not my area of expertise, and I had to rely on a lot of people, but luckily we're not touching the high school kids who need all that extra sleep, right, guys? But we believe the early childhood children, the kindergartners, for the most part, they are up and ready to go. I know from my grandchildren at the crack of dawn. So we don't think, and we've talked to Jesse Coles about that, we don't think that's going to have a great impact. Probably the biggest impact is the LES, LPS, but again, it's not education wise, it's the effect that it's going to have on the parents. And that is a concern. But the educators would have to speak to that piece. I'm not.
Yeah, I think the biggest change was the early childhood center, and that's our younger kids. It's an hour difference. And the thought is those kids are usually ready to rock and roll at 8 o'clock in the morning. And so educationally, I don't think it's gonna, we don't believe that that's gonna have much of an effect. I will say that at the high school, with the hours will remain the same as they are. The thought for me, you know, as a parent, when you put your parent lens on, when you double up a route, you've now changed the morning routine, and it makes it a little bit more difficult versus if you've got the routine and keep the routine. That's giving parents the ability to set that routine up, and we're trying to do it as early as possible so that parents are aware of that's what their routine is going to be. So, but again, we have staff members this will affect. We have parents, we have the kids, and if we didn't have to do it, if we didn't think we needed to do it, then not something that we really are excited to do, but it's something that we feel like we need to do for our families by the transportation.
The follow-up to that then, so is this something that we see doing temporarily for next year? And if so, is there a strategy? Either way, actually, what strategy are we starting to think about? How can we recruit drivers? Because obviously we've got to reverse this trend at some point.
Well, actually, we're starting to utilize Indeed. Sycamore tried it and they found a couple drivers through that. So we're going to start going down that path. We advertise, but advertising has had no effect at all. The biggest help we've had is word of mouth, is friends, is my dad's retired and he's bored. He'd like to come and do those types of things. So and that's primarily because most of our drivers are from Loveland, and they talk to their friends and they ask their friends, are you interested in doing it? So that's our big gain in drivers right there. But we talk, Greg Goosey, our transportation manager, they talk with all of the other directors around, how are you doing it? What are you doing? And they've mostly made an agreement. I won't try to steal your employees if you don't try to steal my employees. So, but it is, I mean, drivers can find more hours if they want to, if they chose to leave Loveland for that purpose. Ours do not, which I'm very thankful for.
I did just text my show choir dads and tell them some of them need to give up their careers and become bus drivers. So I'll let you know. If I can.
Yep.
Thank you. I mean, they can sing at the bus or.
Yeah.
Well, and we tried to get the retirees to start a second career as,
They laughed at you.
they did laugh. Yes, I noticed that.
I recall a previous board member being asked to fill in.
Yeah.
Mhm. And she has not signed up yet, correct?
So the other part of the equation, and the leadership team has been working quite a bit on this, is we do have teachers that are traveling, and this will change schedules. So making sure that this is going to work with staffing, we're pretty comfortable that it will. If the board is okay with us moving forward, then I think we'll look at that even closer and make sure that that's going to work. We believe it will. And then as soon as we have that assurance, we would want to get it out to our parents as soon as possible, so they're aware of what the changes will be for next year.
So you're not asking for a resolution on this? You're
No.
asking for board members. I would suggest that board members should voice dissension, perhaps. And if there isn't any, that you're getting the agreement of the board.
Mike, my advice to you, I think the other day was just allow some time to get community feedback on it before you settle into the plan. Beyond that, I trust that you and John and everybody else have got the skill to figure out the best answer to it, and you should be allowed to do that.
Very good. Thank you. Okay.
Anything else, Mr. Broadwater?
I've got one last slide. Well, a couple other topics. Mr. Ames, if you could get to the next slide. We have, I thought I would bring some good news. The Loveland High School received the Best High School U.S. News and National Report for 2022. Best high schools, congratulations. And I also threw some data in there, and knowing that the way that they rank the best high school really based on testing, your AP testing, your state testing. There's some other metrics that are in there. So when you hear people saying, make sure that we're teaching the reading, make sure we're teaching the writing, make sure we're teaching math, we are. When you look at the results that we have, I put some data up there. Up top, we were ranked, Loveland High School is ranked 1,209th out of 17,843 national high schools. Therefore, putting us in the top 6.7% of all the public high schools in the United States. We were 45th out of 874 schools in the state, putting us in the almost the top 5%, 5.1% in the state. And then local, which is 12 out of 123. We are at 9.7% locally, which tells you locally we have some very good school districts and we compete very, very well. And within the larger metropolitan area, we did rank Loveland High School ranked 12th, which is a testament to everything that gets done there. We have our students, you talked about the AP and students that really challenge themselves. What I would say is, while we're extremely proud of this, it does not measure whatsoever everything else we do for kids. Hope Squad, Link Crew, Show Choir, everything we do for kids, it's not in there. So when you say, make sure we teach to the basics, that's it right there. We do very, very well when you look at competitively nationally. So that is the good news that I had. The last thing I was going to mention was I had some board members emailing, asking about on the HR report. You'll see, I believe we have 10 teachers that are going to be receiving continuing contracts. So I thought what I would do is kind of explain that. We do have probably a few more this year because COVID did not allow for the OTES system of evaluation last year and maybe even the year before. So you've got a few more. It's 10 out of about 300, so about 3%. But with continuing contract, it is in the Ohio Revised Code 3319.11. And basically our teachers, as soon as they become Loveland City School District teachers, they're put into the Ohio Teacher Evaluation System. They will be evaluated per that Ohio evaluation system as they go through. It normally takes 3 to 5 years, if not longer, for a teacher to even become eligible to apply for continuing contract, simply because they've got to be in 3 to 5 years in that district, also receive a master's, or I believe it's up to 30 hours. And so it is not something that happens overnight. What you will see is, for the most part, the teachers that are applying for continuing contract probably have a lot of years of experience and also have gone through quite a few Ohio Teacher Evaluation System evaluations. And principals are aware, where do they end up? Are they skilled, accomplished, developing? Where are they? And then the last end of the process is teachers will ask the principal, should I apply for continuing contract or shouldn't I? The reason they do that is because when they apply for continuing contract, if they are not approved that first year, they've got one more year that they have to prove that they deserve a continuing contract or their contract is terminated. So the public school districts are, I don't want to say bound, we have to follow the Ohio Revised Code in the issuing of continuing contracts. The districts I've been in prior, those two, this is the time where you see continuing contracts. It's at the end of the evaluations for the school year. They've met all the requirements. The year that they are going for their continuing contract, they do go through the Ohio Teacher Evaluation System. So as the principal is able to evaluate them that specific year as well. And so I received some questions. Hopefully that answers some of those. But I would open up if you have other questions or if you would like me to discuss further.
Were you gonna?
No.
Mike, I was just gonna remind us, I haven't had a chance to look at the new calendar that we talked about earlier yet, but one of the subjects that we had talked about, I think 4 or 5 months ago, was putting on a recurrent to-do list a review of teacher and really all employee evaluations to just give some light to how we're managing that process, anticipating that, you know, in any population, there are going to be people who do terrific. There'll be people who are struggling, and there'll be a lot of people sort of in the middle. And that to me would kind of play into what we would see in the continuing contract development.
Sure.
Not everybody should be, I shouldn't say should be, but it's unlikely that everybody will make it there, right?
It requires a lot of work. It requires a lot of effort. You've got to get the master's degree. You've got to go through the evaluation system, and our principals are adept at making sure that they are, if they're going to evaluate them as skilled or accomplished, or if they need improvement, they're going to go through that. And so it really is, it's a culmination for a teacher who has gone through a lot of evaluation systems and has really done what they need to do in terms of the continuing education. But to me, to your end, it's kind of where each teacher wants to get to, right? That's where they would like to get, is they've reached the point where they do have the required education and they do have the proper evaluations throughout their career to be able to achieve it. I don't know if I answered your question.
Just in response to that, as I was working on the calendar, had asked for input from board members and to speak to your particular suggestion there, Mr. Doherty. I did place in the calendar a report from the superintendent for student and staff achievement. There's a little bit of a, not a problem. The evaluation process is spelled out clearly by contract, and the Board of Education is not a part of the evaluation process. So the board needs to understand that what we get is a report from the administration of, and this item on the agenda is actually a report of that sort, that we have this many teachers who are, this many getting 2, this many getting continuing. But we probably would not be receiving a report specifically about how the evaluation process worked for individual teachers or even groups of teachers
So Kathy, let me just,
without it being a part of the contract negotiations, if that makes sense.
so it's hard as a member of a board of education to evaluate the effectiveness of our teaching staff through their evaluations without having any idea what those evaluations are or how the percentage of those evaluations are distributed among the staff. And right now, that's where we are. Does our staff, for instance?
It may be a point of semantics that we wouldn't be talking about individual evaluation. There could very well be a report at some point of a percentage of Loveland staff that is proficient, that is high achieving. So that's why I was suggesting a report on student and staff achievement as opposed to a report on evaluations. The board certainly has access to how that evaluation process works, but not how an individual evaluation works.
And I agree with you, and I think it's important. I think what Kevin was getting at, not to speak for you, is I'm not interested in Eileen's evaluation. I'm interested in the board as a whole's evaluation. Just like I'm not interested in any individual teacher's evaluation. I'm interested in the teaching staff's evaluations in aggregate.
Right.
Yeah, and I thought that's exactly correct. And I think that we could disagree about this, but I think one of the things that we do as a board is to exert some influence over the direction and the performance of the district. And one of the key things for me, when I think about it that way, is that these evaluations aren't about, penalizing somebody for not doing well. It's about ensuring that there is an ongoing process of employee development, that people are moving. If it was a bell curve, they're moving from left to right because we're helping them to achieve the best level of performance and contribution that they possibly can. And if you don't measure it, you have no idea, you have no faith that that's actually happening. So it's exactly what Eric said. I'm not interested in names or even, I don't know. What I'm interested in is populations. And
I understand that. I just understand, as I know when we talk about student records, that in a district of our size, it's sometimes a matter of one or two people. And if you're talking about things even in aggregate, if you have okay, we have this many students and one of them is number one and only one is at the bottom, you begin to be able to kind of call out people. So I just think that the board needs to be careful how it inserts itself into the work of the teachers and the administration and the Teachers Association.
It's different than inserting yourself in work to see a
Yeah.
report of those aggregate trends, of staff development,
Right.
and are we on the right track?
what you're saying is a very real problem. It does happen. And I think the way you avoid it is to ensure that whatever reporting system you put into place kind of has minimum population sizes that you're willing to disclose data on.
I would just be more comfortable with the administration talking to the board about what kinds of reporting and what kinds of things work, as opposed to the board from top down saying, we want this report.
Oh.
I'm happy to have us work together. I'm just saying that for the board to request specific things, I think they need input from the administration.
I think what I'm hearing is really it's like twofold. One is our achievements. When you look at the U.S. News and World Report and our state assessments, we do very, very well. Okay, so as a whole, our teaching staff is doing very, very well. We have a great teaching staff. The other part of it is the aggregate that you're talking about, how teacher evaluations model that we use. What is the aggregate? Where does it up? If you look at the state report card, our state report card has a lot of data on our staff as well. So what I'm hearing maybe is us maybe educating ourselves on what information that is so that we can move forward and maybe you can what information you need further. But the state report card does have some information on that. Mr. Collier, I don't know if you're going to add.
Yeah, that's what I was gonna let the board know, that in previous years, the Ohio State Report Card System has some percentages of teachers when it comes to evaluation scoring in certain areas. So we're getting ready to have a new report card, but this is what I can tell you. That type of information that I believe that you're trying to kind of ask about, that information has been available before. What Mike and I can work on is making sure that even if the new report card doesn't have that in-depth of information, what we can do is give you a summary that's pretty equivalent to what that report card summary is. And I think it'll answer a lot of your
Yeah,
questions.
so I think you know me well enough to know that I don't micromanage things.
Oh, no,
I'm not-
absolutely.
I'm not trying to in this instance either. I'm concerned about, big themes and people performance, leadership capability, the ability to deliver good results. That's a major area of any organization's success formula. And what I'm urging is that we have some quantitative mechanism to evaluate how everybody's doing. And if it said everybody's doing perfect, you'd say, well, nobody wants to deal with the challenges that are likely there, right? If it said that everybody was average, I'd say, you're missing an opportunity to call out superb performance, and as much as you're missing out on an opportunity to bring somebody along. Much more big picture, much more thematic. That's the kind of thing that I'm after.
And I'm not trying to stop anything that this board is trying to achieve. Truly, to me, it's a matter of semantics, and this board would not, in my opinion, ask for a report on teacher evaluations. That terminology would immediately sound like we are asking to see teacher evaluations. You're talking about performance, you're talking about achievement, you're talking about development. Those are, percentages that get up there. I just wanted to be careful that we don't say we're looking to insert ourselves into evaluations.
Yeah, so I don't know if we agree or disagree right now.
Right.
But I
I understand.
No,
And I think
so-
it needs more discussion. I just wanted to let you know that I had talked about that in the calendar, that there's a slot
Good.
for it. The terminology may not be right. I want to catch Nicole before she leaves. I was going to wait till the end of Mike's report
Kathy has an
And-
evaluation of you.
to let Nicole and Austin go, but I also wanted Nicole to take her nameplate with her because this is her last meeting.
There you go.
Thank you very much.
Put it on
Thank you,
your
you too,
door.
and enjoy the
Yeah,
rest of your
text your
evening.
door.
And
So
I
maybe
guess,
maybe this will bring it to a close, but I would just ask that you, having heard this conversation, come back and give us your thoughts on
But I
A,
think-
what we're saying or what some of us are saying, what all of us are saying, and how you might approach
Sure.
answering it.
I agree with half and disagree with you. But I think Garth and I
will
have
tell
a,
you that this board, not this 5-member board, but our board has had the tradition of joining in the retreat at the end of the year, which happens on school property. It is simply administrators coming together if they choose to do so. And they have reported on what has happened in their building,
Mhm.
their plans for the next year. And that would obviously be a wonderful time to have this kind of report as well. We obviously have not had those the past couple of years. A few things have happened in the world, but that might be an opportunity to. think about that
Yeah,
as well.
Dr. Lorenz, historically speaking, for the past couple of years, when the quote retreat time here in the media center, a really long retreat, really long walk for us to get to the media center. Historically, there were times where the board would come to that particular event and building administrators would be talking about all kinds of things, their building's achievement, what their goals are, those type of things. And then when we transitioned to if you remember, our building principals presenting at the board meetings, giving you those presentations, and that was the transition for that.
Mhm.
But to wrap up the conversation, I think Mike was getting ready to say, Mike and I can work on some sort of let's call a summary of not just quote teacher evaluations. I think everybody understands that we're not talking about individual teacher evaluation, but a summary of staff and their quote growth overall. And I think that Mike and I can work together to get you some information that historically has been on the state report card. Maybe or maybe it won't be on the new report card, but we can certainly get you some information of a summary so you guys feel more comfortable and have some knowledge about how our group's doing.
that's exactly what I was going to say.
Okay,
And
great.
what I would also mention is, I'm sure you know this, but please understand the most valuable asset we have next to our kids is our staff in the classroom. So we take the evaluation of our staff very, very seriously. And it's looking at one thing we've heard in the strategic vision is making sure that we are consistent across grade levels. And when you look at evaluations, you certainly don't want to see, you're always going to look at the information when evaluations come back. If you have a school that has all accomplished or all skilled, or where are we as a collective administrative team so that we're making sure that we have consistent evaluations? Because again, the most important thing we do for our kids is provide that adult in the classroom. And so I think it's a good thing for us to look at and see and be able to tell you what efforts we put forth in that. And Garth's very, very good at figuring out what we think we can do in regards to kind of an aggregate.
Yeah. And something to note is that the evaluation system has changed. We are in kind of like a second phase of that evaluation system, and there are certain parts of it that have changed. And student growth measures being a part of teacher evaluation. There's a little bit of a different metric that's used now. So what in that summary, I think what Mike and I will be able to do is kind of give you some kind of like a historical look, and then looking at when the Ohio evaluation system has made a change and how that's impacted our staff as well. And I think it'll get the information that you're looking.
Yeah, it's good conversation.
I think what's been asserted this evening is that we've always done that in Loveland, that, you know, that our staff is very important and that we know what's going on with our staff. What we're discussing this evening is the way in which the board is informed of, learns of, is sure of that kind of information. So. Okay, anything else?
That's it.
Okay, very good. All right, then we move into board resolutions. I also wanted people to stay for this. The first resolution we have is to approve the list of 2022 Loveland High School graduates, and I'll make that motion, but I don't know if I should leave Nicole's name on
We
there or
should.
not. So anyway, I will move to approve the list of graduates.
Second.
And was that Dr. Swetchnow who seconded? And also just make a note that this list of graduates is of course verified by the counselors, verified by the students' records, verified by the high school administration, and it comes to the board as a stamp of, yes, we're graduating these. We don't need to review these graduates. Say, I know that one, I don't know this one. We are affirming the administrative recommendation that those students have made it and are going to graduate on Saturday.
I don't know. I did go through the list today, though. A little teary eyed.
Oh, okay. I thought you were going to say you went through read it all.
I did read all the names.
Well,
but
yes,
to see
yes.
how many of them I knew and
Yeah.
how long I've known them for.
Mhm. Okay, so Mrs. Washburn, Reverend Eilert, and I will be at graduation and we'll share the duties of handing out the diplomas to these folks. All right,
An honor.
Mr. Giuffre, can we vote on that?
Dr. Lorenz,
Yes.
Dr. Swetchnow,
Yes.
Mr. Doherty,
Yes.
Reverend Eilert,
Yes.
Mrs. Washburn.
Yes.
Nicole will be happy to know that the motion carried. All right, the next item is approval of a new Loveland High School course, Hope Squad. Can we have a motion? And I think we'll have some discussion on.
So moved.
Second.
I heard Mrs. Washburn and then Mr. Doherty. And I believe I see Ms. Honor coming up to give us some information on this Hope Squad course. And you have it attached in board docs as well.
So all of you had a chance to meet with our Hope Squad students tonight, and as part of that program, there is a curriculum that accompanies it. In the past, our squad members have had the opportunity to use that information and go through all this in kind of an after school setting. And it's kind of exciting right now that we're able to work that into a course in high school. So most of the students who will be what next year in the high school have no go through that curriculum their schedule. This one is coming a little later than normal, but I just wanted everybody to know that with some creative scheduling, we were able to make that happen, and we felt like it was an in. It's part of the package anyway. It's not an additional cost, and we had a way to kind of work that in. So it's an exciting move.
Super.
I got to see the curriculum too, and it's all scripted and set and very robust.
Absolutely. I think it will be.
Any other questions or comments?
What other parallels in our current course offerings where would you put this with, or what other courses are there like this?
Like this?
Mhm.
Well,
I mean, obviously not directly like this.
yeah, so I do know at our high school that we have some in our business applied tech department. We have some what you would consider more real life applicable type coursework. So for example, financial literacy is a requirement now as an actual course. And when we went through that review, halfway through the year, we were able to determine that we already had so many things in place that it didn't require structuring or hiring of new staff or anything like that. So anything that's just like Hope Squad, have anything just like that curriculum, but the idea that we have some programs that are maybe a little bit more scripted, a little bit more kind of space, it is one that I can think of as this is the mindset.
Anything else? All right, Mr. Giuffre, can we vote on that?
Mrs. Washburn,
Yes.
Mr. Doherty,
Yes.
Reverend Eilert,
Yes.
Dr. Lorenz,
Yes,
Dr. Swetchnow.
Yes.
motion carried. Let's see, I'm working off of 3 different things here. Next item is a motion to approve the 2022-2023 student handbooks. Is there a motion?
So moved.
Mrs. Washburn moved and I will second. I will simply make a note on this. You all received, I believe, student handbooks. It's been a little while. We put those off for a little bit. I will let you know that I found a typo. Surprise, surprise. It happened to be in one section that was in every school's handbook. That's getting fixed. The other thing to note is that in the copy that you received, if you received a hard copy or an online, there was discussion of changing the technology fee for next year, and the decision has been made not to change that fee. So the technology fee will be $50 as it currently is for next year. So that will be reflected in the handbook as well. Any questions or comments or discussion about the handbook? I think it's pretty good just finding one typo. That's pretty good. All right, Mr. Giuffre, can we vote on those?
Mrs. Washburn,
Yes.
Dr. Lorenz,
Yes.
Mr. Doherty,
Yes.
Reverend Eiler,
Yes.
Dr. Schwetzner.
Yes.
The next item is to approve a memorandum of understanding with the city of Loveland for school resource officer for board member for board members to note. You received a note that this added a little bit late to the agenda for people who are watching online. This is in board docs. It was waiting for some information from the city of Loveland. So that's why it was a little bit delayed getting on the agenda. But is there a motion to approve the memorandum of understanding with the city of Loveland for school resource officers?
Second.
That was Mrs. Washburn and Mr. Doherty again. Questions, discussion? Mr. Broadwater, you have anything you'd like to say first, or?
Just thanks to Interim Chief Sue Madsen for working so closely with us to get this done so quickly. I apologize for it getting in late, but when you have two entities working together, it takes a little bit of time and we're able to manage it, and she's been fantastic to work with. Also, our school resource officer currently at the high school, Officer Jesse Moore, is going to be moving into the detective role here soon. And so next year we will have a new school resource officer at the high school. We're going to work in conjunction with the Loveland Police Department as we interview those candidates, and we're excited to move on. And I think at Loveland City School District, we are, I think we're pretty lucky to have two individuals that are in our buildings and working with kids. I am very, very happy that we have what we have here at Loveland. And I will say the Loveland Police Department has been fantastic to work with. They are extremely responsive. And Chief Madsen's no different. She has been great to work with.
Okay, any questions?
Mike, just one quick question. Is this particular document subject to records requests, given that it's got some security aspects to it?
I would think it would be open to public record. I would think it would be.
As long as it doesn't divulge any security information that would jeopardize the safety of the children.
There is, I don't want to get into it publicly, but just the level of resource that's described in it to
I
me
understand.
would not be necessary for, it would be disclosing something from a security perspective.
Let me check. I'll get an answer to that.
Okay,
It is in fact on board docs, and
it's public now.
it is, yes, and in public content. And Mr. Doherty did in fact get the prize for the evening. He found a typo in it. So understanding is misspelled at one point. So
Page 9.
we're gonna have to start bringing a prize for proofreading. So, but anyway, if you would check on that.
Yeah.
Okay, any other questions? Mr. Giuffre?
Mrs. Washburn?
Yes.
Mr. Doherty,
Yes.
Reverend Eiler,
Yes.
Dr. Lorenz,
Yes,
Dr. Schwetzner.
Yes.
motion carried.
I thought you were kidding with page 9. You were absolutely correct. It is on page 9.
Don't send
Okay.
it to us Unless you want us to read it.
You're right. Well, right.
The next item is the 2022-2023 Hamilton County Educational Service Center contract. And I will make that motion. Is there a second? Second. And Mrs. Washburn seconded. Just before, it looks like Mr. Coles is going to talk to us a little bit about it. He's going to talk about, I think, the increase. just for the benefit of our public who does see that, that contract on board docs, that is a complete contract with a list of choices. Loveland does not choose all of the things that are on the contract. So the things that Loveland chooses are marked with what they cost, but the things that are not marked that way are not choices. We've just encountered this issue before, of folks looking at it and thinking we were getting services that we were not contracting. So,
It's the
Mr.
invoiced amount.
yes, yes,
This is really an order form and you pick and choose what you want.
right. But that's how they set up their contract. So that's what we have. Mr. Coles, what do you have for us?
Points of clarification. Yeah, I was going to say the same thing. Now I don't have to.
Sorry.
Great job. Thank you for that. So the biggest thing you're going to see on this contract, it is a big one. And the majority of it is for our speech and language therapists and our ESL teachers. And the reason we do it this way is because those populations fluctuate. So from year to year, we don't exactly know what our students' needs are going to be until we know what our students' needs are going to be. So by doing it this way, we are able to quickly adapt and make sure our students' needs are being met. Then the other things that you'll see on there are different types of consortiums, Title I consortium, the ESL consortium, school site PD. We get support for our preschool program with making sure we are compliant and step up to quality ready and all of those types of things. So this contract, I don't even know, several pages long. And you're right, there are a lot of boxes that will be blank because we're not using those boxes. So as you scroll through it, the boxes we are using will either have a number or an X, and then in the invoice column, there will be another number. All of the other ones that are blank are not things that Loveland City Schools is utilizing. The increase, there is an increase. We worked really hard to try to make sure our service needs is commensurate with what our students' needs are in making sure we're not increasing those types of things. But there is an increase, most notably Hamilton County ESCs increased their menu items 5% across the board. So everything on that list came with a 5% increase. So obviously we're going to see that. And that's basically what the increase was. A couple of other changes that you'll see is when we shifted our first grade students from LCSD to LPS, that really allowed us to focus on LCSD as an early childhood center, which gives our principal the opportunity and the time to take on some more of those preschool leadership roles. So we were able to decrease our preschool contract with Hamilton County ESC significantly, which we were super excited about. And then we see a growing number with our JPS autism scholarship programs. So you're going to see an increase in the cost there, just in a management aspect of that and making sure we're compliant again with meetings, IEPs, those types of things. So that's a pretty much a summary of what that contract looks like. It is an increase from last year, mostly based on the 5% increase from services provided.
Is this where our communication services would have been located previously?
Yes, yeah. That would not have shown up on that number. That was a separate service agreement through Hamilton County.
It was, okay.
ESC. But yes, that is where it was previously. So later, when we do separate individualized service agreements based on our needs for that school year, that will be a nice decrease in our actual invoice amounts, but you're not going to see that reflected on this.
I'm just wondering, apples to apples comparison. That's actually not, our savings from that is not reflected.
Not show up on this. That is correct.
Jesse, I had one question. I certainly understand the logic and the rationale of being able to be more flexible with highly paid staff that we wouldn't necessarily need from year to year. We employ through HCESC a significant number of speech pathologists in particular. Would it be of benefit for us as a system to hire some minimum level of speech pathologists, knowing that we're not going to fall below 3, for instance? What has been our usage of that over time? And obviously we pay a premium to HCESC for that service.
Yep. And that is a good question. We actually do have a couple of speech and language pathologists that do work for us already. So this is in addition to the folks that are working for us. But as far as the long-term, with the advantage of hiring them as opposed to contracting them out. I would have to lean on Garth a little bit on that, and I don't have an answer for that tonight, but that is something him and I can definitely sit down and work through and look at numbers on, because that need is not decreasing, full disclosure. Like the trend is pretty consistently moving in that direction.
I think that's a very good question because, you know, if we look past, you know, the last 5 years past, we've had 5 or more, then even if it's 3, you're not getting that 5% increase every year. I think it's a great question. That's worth looking at.
Yep. And Garth and I have had that conversation already. In passing, we just don't have the actual numbers worked out and prepared to share. but
Let me
we
go.
have started that discussion.
Let me go back and just add what Kevin said earlier. I'm not trying to micromanage.
You are welcome to help.
Little micromanaging here or there.
Let's ask Tigers Inc. what they think about it.
Macromanage.
More of a macromanage.
Macromanage.
Any other thoughts or questions on that?
Just one quick one, and it's probably, I'm going to bet maybe more for Mike, but 5% increase year over year. I think you had said to me earlier that that's fairly typical. Who holds the service center accountable for their costs?
It would be us, the consumer. But I don't know if you have a better answer, Mr. Giuffre, but
The board is made up of superintendents and treasurers, and decisions are made by their approval. So we are the board for the.
So
fees.
I guess it's feedback for you. Just one board member thinks that 5% per year is high. And I'm not sure why that's happening and why they shouldn't be, kind of holding themselves to the same kind of pressures that we hold ourselves.
They also are competitive
Agreed,
with each
yeah.
other. That's why Warren County is the next contract.
Is
We
Warren
shop.
County seeing 5% as well?
They all have different numbers because of the market, but we are able to shop from one to the other. And they all have their own boards as well that come from the same process that you do to get on this one. But we're the consumer, so it is a consumer-driven basis. They're not a lot of property taxes
So
involved.
let me just express some sensitivity to that one. I don't know if the rest of the board would feel the same way or not, but
I was gonna
There
ask
is
that
also,
follow-
there
sorry,
is
go ahead.
also just, there are not a great number of educational service centers that we can shop from. In other words, we can look at Warren County and take the services that are the best value from there, and we can look in Hamilton County, but we can't very well shop the Cuyahoga County ESC, that kind of thing. So we are a little bit tied.
I just don't think, no district is finding money easy to come by.
it's certainly worth investigation as to where it arrives and what influence there could be.
How do we, when we're shopping these things, obviously we're using right now Warren and Hamilton. Is it based upon experience with those folks? Is it primarily cost-based? What's our evaluative tool as we're looking at the two different entities?
Yeah, I would say it's a combination, and cost-wise, they're very similar. So it's a matter of what relationships do we have in place? How are the folks doing that are working for us? I don't know anybody out by name, but I can tell you from both of these organizations, some of these folks are really, really highly regarded within our district. A lot of the public doesn't even know they're not our people. But if you would say, hey, this person, name, hopefully there's not one of these in the district. Mr. Smith is a rock star. Folks don't realize this is a Warren County employee. So it's just a lot of that for us is the relationships we have, the service they've done, the work they've done, the evaluations they've gone through, the feedback we get from our principals. And we've moved on from folks too. The advantage of these contracts are when we have folks that aren't stellar, I can quickly say, hey, listen, you know what? Either you shift Mr. Jones on, or we're not going to re-up that contract. So we do have a little say in how we can get some different folks in here as needed. That doesn't happen often, but it does happen. We've made some changes already looking ahead for next school year. So great.
Thank you.
Anything else? Mr. Giuffre, can we vote on that?
Yes. Dr. Lorenz,
Yes.
Mrs. Washburn,
Yes.
Mr. Darty,
Just clarification, is this both of them or just Hamilton? Right?
just Hamilton
Just
right now.
Yes.
Reverend Eiler
Yes.
and Dr. Schwetchnow.
Yeah.
Motion carried. And then the next one, we would need a motion to approve the 2022-2023 Warren County Educational Service Center contract.
So moved.
Second.
Reverend Eilert moved and Mr. Doherty seconded. That also is board docs. Questions, discussion? Mr. Coles, anything to add on that one?
Sure. First thing is, this one's a little easier to read. They don't list out all of their options. You can see the three things that we have reserved with them. And the overwhelming majority of this is your occupational therapist and your physical therapist. Same idea, question out to what you had asked before. Yes, Garth and I can look at those too and look at trend data and see if that's something we want to talk about as becoming our employees and that type of thing, what that process means. The one thing we would have to keep in mind on both of those contracts, if we go that route, is these folks have agreements in place where we can't necessarily hire their people. So we can hire an SLP or an OT or a PT, but we may lose that person that we think is really good. So those are the things we would have to balance as we look at those types of things, but we will definitely dig into that and get some information for you on it.
And this one is also a 5% increase over last year. Is that correct? Or am I wrong about that?
That's what, in the estimates that I shared with you all on Monday, that's what I was projecting. Rob, do you know if that's how that actually came out to be? I don't know if it was 5% exactly.
Okay.
I think so. I think so.
What's the 1 to 2 sentence explanation of what the transition living classroom?
The transition living classroom, I'm sorry.
Yes, that third piece there.
So that is if we have students that have, like, just what it sounds like, needs, they are transitioning to different high school or out of high school, and they have needs that exceed what we are able to provide, we reserve that spot. So that way we have that as an option for them. That is not something that we basically usually end up using it at some point within the school year, but that's what that is. It's a spot for kids that are transitioning with needs beyond what we can house in the high school. And there may or may not be another fit that fits for them. So that's just a spot that is ready to go.
Thanks.
Yep.
Anything else? All right, Mr. Giuffre, can we vote on that one?
Reverend Eilert,
Yes.
Mr. Doherty,
Yes.
Dr. Lorenz,
Yes.
Dr. Schweitzer,
Yes.
Mrs. Washburn.
Yes.
Motion carried. That moves us to Director of Human Resources items. And so we would need a motion to approve the resolutions of the Director of Human Resources, including resignations and employment of certified classified homebound substitute and supplemental positions for the 2021, 2022, and 2022, 2023 school years.
So moved.
Mrs. Washburn moved. Is there a second?
Second.
Reverend Eilert seconded. Mr. Collier, do you have a report before we start discussing?
Yeah, I just want to make sure to note that there are a couple of items that you'll see in board docs that I wasn't able to share with you with a lot of advanced notice. The 98% of what's in here, you guys have had advanced notice of. You'll see it, things highlighted in yellow were things that were just most recently added. And you can see by the length of the agenda that the HR department has been super busy. It is spring and summer is a very busy time for my office. And I believe Judy is still sitting in here. If I'm gonna be at a board meeting and talking about our department and not thanking Judy for all of her work, would be remiss. So Judy, thanks for everything that you do. But a couple of things that I would like to point out. You'll see that in here that we have, and Mr. Broadwater already talked a little bit about teacher contracts. So there are 1-year contracts, multi-year contracts, and continuing contracts listed here. There are some extended days listed here along with our supplemental positions. The supplemental positions come in a couple of different waves. So you guys have probably noticed them depending upon if they were a fall or a spring or a winter supplemental, or if it's a year-long supplemental. And also there is not only lots of new hires that are certified and classified folks, but also our recommendation for our new Assistant Superintendent of Teaching and Learning, who is here with us tonight. That's Dr. Stacy Orso. I would just like to bring to your attention, that that it is recommended for you guys to be voting for that tonight, and she is in attendance, and we are super glad to be bringing on somebody with such class and expertise coming to the position. So welcome to Loveland.
Welcome.
Welcome.
Thanks.
Questions for me?
Questions or comments? First, let me say for Stacy that just because Mrs. Connors is here as well, that we certainly needed someone with competence and class and professionalism to replace the person who's leaving us. So
Yes. For all the people who weren't able to view the board, our last board meeting when Andrea's resignation was on there, we talked at length about what she has meant to us. And she's a class act, and I am super excited for her next adventure. She's going to be the best principal Batavia High School's ever had.
we're glad that both of those folks are
Yes.
here with us this evening.
And Andrea knows my feelings. I have told her numerous times. She knows how I feel. So I wish her the best of luck. We're going to miss you, Andrea.
Thank you.
Just to echo what Garth said, but also the process, when you open up an assistant superintendency at Loveland, you get quite a few qualified candidates, and we had quite a few qualified candidates. The process was bringing in 6 very good candidates. Dr. Orso rose above simply because her responses are student-centered, and the fact that at Deer Park, where she is at, it's a similar assistant superintendency in that you wear a lot of hats. Here at Loveland, Mrs. Connor has worn a lot of hats, and she's worn them with grace and just class. And so we're excited for Stacy to be with us. We're excited for Andrea in her next chapter, and we just say welcome and thank you for being here, Dr. Orso.
And I will just make one more comment. She's going to give me trouble every time we have her name on an agenda, because I had to confirm that her name is pronounced Stacy, even though it doesn't have a Y on the end of it. Looking for the Y, but it is spelled correctly and we're pronouncing it correctly. So
I
just wanted
believe so, yes.
that, so. Questions?
Yeah, Garth, just a normal question. Actually, I haven't asked you in a number of months, but because there are so many positions on here, net impact on both staffing and dollars to the district? Any?
Yeah, so you'll see that I updated you guys previous to the meeting, talking about there's always an opportunity when we have resignations or retirements for us to be fiscally responsible in not only trying to find the best talent that's in the Cincinnati area to attract to our district, but also looking through the lens of making sure that we're being fiscally responsible while we do it. And I can tell you that not just the HR office with Judy and myself, but our building principals have done a really nice job of kind of like sorting through and really trying to find the best of the best when it comes to what the cost is, but also what the new employee is going to bring to the system. And I feel like that we married those two really well so far. Of course, that's my job for me to be kind of overseeing and working with our building principals. We will continue to be hiring folks from now and over the summer.
So bottom line, incremental cost to the district, no.
Oh yeah, a definite decrease.
That's fine, but
Yes.
but no increase. And headcount wise, neutral.
Headcount wise right now is neutral. There is going to be, when Jesse was talking about the Hamilton County ESC contract, and there were some preschool services that he mentioned that the building principal, when we moved first grade out, there could be more of a focus of an early childhood kind of center. There is going to be an increase of a 0.2. So when I'm talking like an increase, we're talking about if there's going to be an increase and you guys are going to know about it, it is
The case where FTEs will increase by 0.2.
That's correct.
Dollars, maybe not.
Correct. Actually, that part's going to be a wash. We might actually be on the better end of that. And that increase actually isn't on this report, but it's going to be on the next report. It has to do with a guidance counselor that works at LECC.
Okay.
We've already been working with her. And what that's going to allow us to do is that it gives us much more flexibility of the array of things that can be handled. The Hamilton County ESC support has been really great, but it's strictly for preschool. And for us to decrease that contract and start phasing that out and having a small increase with someone like our counselor position, the array of things, not only working with preschool, but also with kindergarten, gives us some flexibility with the building principal as well.
So thank you for that. Again, I asked you publicly about this in a number of months.
Yeah.
Used to ask you every month about it.
Yes.
And we've had enough discussion in between to know the way you think about this.
Yes.
And that's the way you manage it on a routine basis, but the public may not be aware of all of that. And given the extensive nature of this one, I just wanted to bring that out.
Sure.
Assuming that was
Yeah,
okay.
I mean, Kevin, and the whole board, of course, I want you guys to know that that's my task. My task is for us to maintain and to attract the best talent we have so we can have the best of the best for our students here at school. But also, we need to make sure that we're making right decisions with our money and our taxpayers' money. And it is at the forefront of my mind in every decision that we make. And you can see with the detail that I've tried to provide you guys, kind of an in-depth look at, some of those decisions and what that impact is.
I'd say kudos to you. Knowing one situation in particular with music staff and what you're able to do, move a teacher back up to where she can have the most impact without affecting the overall budget or our lower grade students. Well done in being able to manage all of these pieces.
Yeah.
Put people where they're going to be.
Sure. Thank you. One of the things, and I know that Mr. Doherty and I have talked about this, really the whole board, we've talked about this, is that, part of the goal is not only to attract the best and to make sure that we're spending our money wisely, but it's also when the opportunity occurs is to, with FTE count, where is it that we need the help and where can we shift without an increase of money and not an increase in FTE to fill voids that we have or needs that we have. And every time that there's a retirement or a resignation, it allows us to take a closer look and to make some adjustments so we're kind of like making sure that we're doing the things that we need for our kids and for our buildings without an overall increase is the job.
Yeah, this is the business side of running the district, and you guys approach this, in my opinion, you approach it the way businesses approach it. You're prioritizing, you're reallocating, keeping your eye on what you can afford versus what you'd like to do. And it's been working for quite some time now, and thank you both and the rest of the team for the way you've approached it.
Yeah, I got to tell you, some kudos to our building principals and assistant principals for this interview process. Springtime for an administrator is an extremely busy time. Adding on to it, the importance of finding the right folks to fill positions with the kind of demands that I'm kind of asking them to find the best people, and then bringing those folks to my office to make sure that we're making the right decisions. It's a huge thanks to them because they have been working hard and an already really difficult time of year for them. So if they're watching, building principals and assistant principals, thank you. You're doing a great job. Keep it up.
I was going to echo that and just say thanks to Garth. We gave him some difficult parameters to work with. Sometimes it's difficult in the spring when you say, let's find the 0, 1, or 2 year of experience. And Garth has done a very good job of communicating with the principals and making sure those expectations are there and letting them know why we have to do that. But also, you never paint anything with a broad brushstroke. There are certain positions that you do have to make sure that you invest in so that we do the right thing for kids too. And that's part of the business too, is taking care of kids. But Garth has done a fantastic job and monitoring what the FTEs are and moving forward with it. So kudos to you.
Just a note for the board members, there's another item coming up that is also supplemental positions, but there are a great number of supplemental positions in this item that we're voting on. And just to let you know that was something that has been included in the board calendar so that you know when to expect the fall supplementals, which are by far the biggest group because it has the grade coordinators and the subject coordinators,
right,
as well as the athletic and extracurriculars. But then there's a winter supplementals piece that comes up and then a spring supplemental. So we've put those on the calendar so you know when to expect them. also to report that we do have here in Loveland, I don't know if this is typical in all other districts, but we have a very good supplemental committee that keeps working on what we need for supplementals, where we're using them, where we've got the number of students that we need to serve. So we do that regularly through this great committee. But we also, I am aware that we also regularly review our supplementals to see how we are doing as per other districts as well, so that we don't get out of line and that we are doing what we should be doing for our kids, but we're paying attention to the bottom line there as well.
Yes. Thanks for bringing it up. The supplemental committee is a group that I quote lead. We meet quarterly, 4 times a year. It's a really dedicated group of folks. And we have to make some really tough decisions in there because there are many supplementals that get brought to the team. There's lots of difficult discussions. And the ones that get brought forward are the ones that have really kind of like have risen to the top. It is not the case that if you bring a supplemental to the committees that it's going to be a recommendation for the board. So, and I know that you guys aren't a part of that, but I just want to echo the idea of if it's being brought forward, it's because it is a need. It is something that we feel like is really good for kids. And we feel like it is comparable to the districts that we compare ourselves to, that we need to keep, we need to maintain our opportunities for our students. Those are the things that we're keeping in mind, with also making sure that we know that we can't just say yes to all of them. I wish we were in a situation we could, but that's just simply not the case. So, thank you.
Mr. Giuffre, can we vote on that one?
Mrs. Washburn,
Yes.
Reverend Eiler,
Yes.
Mr. Darty,
Yes.
Dr. Lorenz,
Yes.
Dr. Schweitzer.
Motion carried. The second item follows right along with this with supplementals. So we need a motion to approve the addition of new supplemental positions for the LEA agreement.
So moved.
Reverend Island moved. Is there a second?
Second.
Mr. Doherty seconded, and those are listed on board docs. How could we say no to Tigers Inc.? They need it.
Yes, it is appropriately number 1 on the list.
Any questions or discuss or any further comments on that?
No, just that, I mean, I'm glad that you mentioned it. That was what I was going to mention, was a little bit of an overview of the supplemental committee and how they get to be at this point. I think we've covered it. You will see here that there are 2 pieces that are tied to our drama program. And those are some pieces where we have been having some folks doing a lot of work. And it's been on a voluntary basis. And we really need, I mean, the amount of money is actually very small. We needed those to make sure that we are doing the right things and making sure, because if you've ever been to a production here at Loveland, they are top notch. And there are a lot of people that do a lot of work. And our students perform in a really great way. And just know that the last one there, the wrestling varsity assistant coach, that isn't just an addition because we feel like that we need more assistant coaches for wrestling. OHSAA, girls wrestling is a thing, right? So if you don't follow high school athletics, girls wrestling is a program where girls have been allowed to participate in the boys wrestling program. And they have been hosting meets basically at the same time. Now it is a complete separate sport. Their tournaments and their competitions are at different times. So there is a need for an additional quote wrestling coach. And so our wrestling program is adapting to that. And this is where we felt like the appropriate spot to begin with girls wrestling was adding an assistant coach and then shifting responsibilities, making sure that we are taking care of wrestling program all together, boys and girls.
Thank you. I don't know if this is the appropriate time to mention that the Ohio High School Athletic Association voted not to enter into the name, image, and
likeness
yes bill. I don't know what anyone thinks about that, but I was just going to make note that it did not pass for high school students. I know they're having quite the time of it in the NCAA and trying to get all the things in line. So I think it would have been a pretty tough thing for high schools to deal with if that passed. So just a note on that.
If I add a note from OHSAA, I guess in not reporting in my superintendent update, and Dr. Urso might have an interest in this, our middle school track team placed extremely high. In fact, I believe, did they win the state? They won
The
the state.
girls were first and the boys were fifth.
So congrats to those kids and Coach Waple and every other coach that was there. I know that's a major achievement. I apologize for missing it at the beginning.
But they won't be able to get endorsements for that.
No, they won't, but I will tell you, our middle school track program, boys and girls historically have been very good. This year is no exception. And this past weekend at the state tournament, Loveland was represented very, very well. Congrats to that group.
Yes.
All right, anything else? We have a motion on this, right? Mr.
Yes,
Chair?
motion
Okay.
and a second.
All right. Can we vote on that then, please?
Reverend Eilert,
Yes.
Mr. Darty,
Yes.
Dr. Lorenz,
Yes,
Dr. Schwetzner,
Yes.
Washburn.
Yes.
motion carried.
All right, Dr. Lorenz, if it's okay with you, if Dr. Orso would like to say a few words, not right now, would be probably the
Yes,
appropriate time.
absolutely.
So
yes.
if you'd like to come up, just say hi.
Well, thank you very much. I just want to say I'm really excited to be here. I know I have very large shoes to fill, and I'm excited to pick up where Andrea will leave off. And we've actually planned some days to get together and work through a transition plan. So I appreciate you giving me the days to be able to work with her before she leaves. And this is my destination district. I'm very happy in Deer Park. I love working there. And this has always just been a place that I knew that if a position opened, this is where I would want to be. I live here. My daughter goes here. She's been attending Loveland since kindergarten. And as she'd be with me tonight, I think I could have convinced her to come, but she's on the Washington DC trip. So she's an 8th grader. So she'll be going into the high school next year. So thank you. And I very much look forward to working with all of you.
Thank you for coming to join us. We're happy to have you. All right. I believe that's it for Director of Human Resources. We then move into treasurer items, financial reports, et cetera. Mr. Giuffre, is it all right if we just go item by item and have a report from you? One? All right. So the first item would be a motion to accept the financial reports, which are on board docs 2022.
Moved.
Mr. Doherty moved. Is there a second? And Dr. Swetch now seconded. Any questions on those? Those are the cash reconciliation and the investment report. Oh, and investment is spelled incorrectly.
It won't happen again.
Investment.
As long as the numbers are correct.
That's right. It's the numbers that are important.
No, never.
No. Okay. Any questions or discussion about those reports? Board Docs is really just popping things up quickly for me tonight. Every once in a while, my screen changes. I don't have.
Mine takes forever.
Okay, well, mine is doing it very quickly. No comments or questions? All right, then can we vote on that?
Mr. Darty,
Yes.
Dr. Schwetzner,
Yes.
Reverend Eilert,
Yes.
Dr. Lorenz,
Yes.
and Mrs. Washburn.
The next item is a motion to approve the amounts and rates determined by the Budget Commission and authorizing the necessary tax levies and certifying them to the county auditor. And I'll second that. And this is simply certifying what is already in place.
Yes, and we actually did this in March when they sent the estimates. Hamilton County is a little different. They send the estimates, then they have a meeting, and then they file for a waiver to the Auditor of State's office for filing late, as opposed to the way Warren County did. So we're just basically approving the same thing. So
Okay.
the amounts and rates are correct. So we're-
And Hamilton County just needs a resolution at a certain time.
Yes,
Okay.
that's.
Any questions or discussion?
Just one quick comment. This is if you go through, I guess, Schedule A,
Yes,
this is actually kind of an interesting document because it's the levy history
yeah,
of the district
Mhm.
on one page.
right.
And you can see if you have any curiosity. I guess this is going back to 1968. How many levies we've had, how often we've had them, how much they've been. And interestingly, I think for some of the conversation yet to come this evening, the last one, which was May of 14. So we've been doing a great job, I think, living on a levy that goes back, what, almost 8 years now, right?
And that relationship between the levy, between the valuation and the millage is what I'm going to touch upon for the forecast, because that is the reality that we live in. And I think that one's down by 2.3 mils since then, or no, that's the one I did in 96, sorry.
Yeah. So if the public gets curious of how this has
Yes.
fared over the course of time, it's in board docs, and it's interesting piece of history reporting here.
This particular document doesn't have the original and then the adjusted down. Is that correct? It just has the current
Current rates, which is what we're approving.
Yes, no, I understand. I'm just saying it doesn't show how it has changed.
What we'll see next month.
Yes,
Yes.
thank you.
This is one of 3 county reports.
Yeah, well, actually, Hamilton County has been our county seat. And then we're growing so much in Claremont County that at some point in time, it's possible it could flip. Originally, Hamilton County was 66% of the district, but they're responsible for communicating with the other 2 counties to make sure that all the numbers are right. And then the Department of Taxation actually is the ones that come down and tell us what the effective millage is. So that because it has to be consistent through all political subdivisions throughout the entire district.
Anything else? Okay, we vote on that one.
Mrs. Washburn.
Yes.
Dr. Lorenz.
Yes.
Mr. Darty.
Yes.
Reverend Islet.
Yes.
Dr. Schweitzer.
Yes.
The next resolution is to approve recipient list for payment and transportation, which is to be determined by the Department of Education, and it has a whereas resolution, which I will not read. And then it does have, am I correct? It has the names there. I can't get it to. Yeah. Yes.
9 students and a straggler on the way.
Okay. So is there a motion for that?
So moved.
Second.
Dr. Swetchnow and Mrs. Washburn moved. Questions or discussion on that?
Current rate's 538, max rate's 1,000 and some change, twice 538. Up significantly from what it was when I was here last time, but
Okay,
that's what we're approving, and Department of Education approves it through the T2 process.
so there is a rate range that they give.
Based upon the average cost of transporting a student in the state of Ohio.
And my assumption is that the 2 numbers that are double are two children in the same family.
And the actual maximum rate.
Don't have 3 children.
Anything else? Can we vote on that?
Dr. Schweitzer.
Yes.
Mrs. Washburn.
Yes.
Mr. Darty.
Yes.
Reverend Islet.
Yes.
Dr. Lorenz.
Yes. I'm going to figure out what rate I can charge my daughter for pickup at the high school for
Right.
transportation. Okay, the next item is a motion to accept the 5-year forecast. Is there a motion?
So moved.
Dr. Switcher now moved. Is there a second?
Second.
And Mr. Doherty seconded, and the forecast is on board docs and then the footnotes as well. Mr. Giuffre, you want to talk to us about that?
So this is going to be fun because Mr. Ames and I have not rehearsed this, so do the best that we can. So I have 2 displays. One is the presentation piece, which is predominantly revenue and a little bit of a story, but also orientation. So anyone who's watching this, anyone who's looking at this, I want to make sure that we understand what document we're talking about. It's a 1-pager for financials, and then there are footnotes that are line by line explaining. So one number on this forecast is represented by a bunch of other numbers underneath it that bring it to the surface, whether it's an actual or forecasted, because there are, just like on the rate sheet, there are a lot of numbers that are associated with it. So I don't have a pointer, which is probably a good thing, but the left-hand column and the numbers that are associated with it are standard prescribed, and this document is prescribed from the Department of Education. And so those are the descriptions of line items. And a lot of these line items have multiple accounts underneath them that roll up to these. And I always tell the board, just pay attention to the big numbers. They're on this page. They're all on this page. And so the first three columns after the descriptions are actual years, 19, 20, 21, actually what has transpired. And the four to the right are projected. And the only difference between November and May is in fiscal year 22, we have a lot more information now. We have 10 months of actual and 2 months of projected left. And we're pretty much on track from where we were. You do want to be above your on estimates on revenue from what comes, or above on revenue from what your estimates are, and you want to be below on expenditures where your expenditure projections are, your budgetary. And so the way this is laid out is to give us a good picture as an organization. And if we scroll down just a skosh there, if that's possible, there we go. Keep going. Keep going, keep going. Right there. So the blue highlighted area is really where we want to focus. The bottom lines below it, or the balances, those are symptoms, either good or bad, of what's going on in the blue. And I wouldn't say good or bad, it's just what it is. The blue tells us well ahead of time what we're to expect. The balances tell us after the fact what transpired. And so I just want to point that out as we go forward. And with that, John, you can scroll down, because I want to make sure also that folks know where to find this stuff. So if you go to the Department of Education, and I think a little higher up there is right there, education.ohio.gov, you will end up on this page, and you just type in 5-year forecast. Well, when you go to that Department of Ed, you'll go to the search, type in 5-year forecast, and you'll come to this page. This page then has all of the school districts in the state of Ohio, all the historical projections, forecasts, and links to the footnotes. So if we scroll on down, it's getting smaller and smaller. You can make that a little bit bigger if you don't mind, John. This is the tool on the site where you can choose the district, you can choose the forecast period, and you can choose which forecast within that period. And then it will produce a document that will give you where those tabs are down at the bottom. So you would have the forecast, the notes, and everything associated with it. In the newer phase of this model, there are historicals that go back to 2013. So if we scroll down, the other link will take you down to these assumptions from prior years. And it actually looks like it goes back to 2007, 17. I don't know what assumptions you would be looking at from that far back, but this is where they reside. If anyone's interested in doing any research or getting their superintendent's license. So that's where all of this resides, is on the Department of Education's website. It's been out there for quite some time. The first time that we were required to report these as a treasurer was a little daunting because it's a bit of a challenge to take all of these components and bring them together. We have much better tools than we had back when we first started this endeavor. But the idea was to be able to give the agency and the Auditor State's Office an opportunity to see where the district was headed and to work with the administration and the board to be able to ensure that the board was funded adequately. So 2 years projected with a positive ending balance will keep you off of their radar. But if you come down to current year and you don't have 2 in the black, they'll give you a phone call and ask you what you're going to do. Go ahead and slide. So with that, I'm going to start with the top line item, which is the real estate tax, general property taxes. And I'm using class 1 millage, which is ResAg, residential agricultural. These bars represent millages. I know those numbers are very difficult to see, but in 2023, from what the board just approved from the Budget Commission, we are, and I need that top there, we are at the same millage, a little further down in 2023. It's at the top, John. On the left. That millage, 36.93 mils. To the far right, that's 2021. It's the same number because that's how it works. Every 3 years, there's a sexennial or a triennial update. Sexennial reappraisal where boots are on the ground looking at your house. And those updates occur every 3 years. That's why there's 3 bars going all the way across. Those are millage rates. The only reason they go up is if the market tanks, and actually they don't go up, they just stay where they are, but they go down when the values go up. And so each one of those 3, and they go up, I'm sorry, when we vote. And that's what this represents, is 3-year period of time of voting. If you look at the dates on those, you'll see those are dates where there were levies that are now on that report that the county auditor asked the board to approve. And that's why they are going up. The 2011 was a unique year because in 2008, the Honorable Dusty Rhodes increased real estate values by 1.5%. And in 2009, the Honorable Nick Nelson dropped them by 10%. And there was a practice, I don't know if it's still in place, where the Honorable Dusty Rhodes would keep values as high as possible. And the International Association of Appraisers states the best practices is 92 to 94%. So we had, I think Wyoming was at 113% of assessed valuation that was being taxed. And I think we may have adjusted our practices, but for Loveland, this is where we are. And we are at a millage rate that is lower than it's been in 10 years. So it hasn't been that low in over a decade.
Rob, just, you and I talk about this one a lot, I think. And I think it always bears some emphasis that as a general rule, when we put a levy in place, it creates X amount of revenue. And that amount of revenue, irrespective of what happens to appraised property values, does not change.
Never goes up.
And what the county does is as effectively, if property values increase, the millage rate that is driving revenue to us decreases in order to keep our revenue flat.
Inversely, yes.
Now, that's not true for all the other parts of real estate taxes, but that's true for school districts as a general rule.
True for school districts for class 1 and class 2. Yes.
Class 1 being.
That's what we saw in that previous report, right?
Yes.
Went through that history page, you could see what was
Right.
now the millage.
Well, and this is only interesting to certain folks, but I think it's relevant to everybody. And if you go to the next one, this is the inverse relationship. There's our property values, and they're going up and up and up. And if you look to the left, the reason they're stair-stepped is because we were still a growth district at the time. This represents the blue as class 1, which is residential agricultural. The orange is class 2, which is commercial. We don't have industrial. And the green bar at the bottom is what used to be tangible personal property, which I'm going to show you later. It's now all it is public utility personal property. In other words, your energy companies, and it's their infrastructure. And so when you look at the blue, you see the steps going up on the left, and that's because we were still growing. When new construction occurs, it's additional revenue. We're kind of built out, and that's why it leveled, but the leveling is in 2008. The reason it pulled back is because when 2008 occurred, property values had already been increased by 1.5%, and they had to pull them back in 2011 to get them back in check and get them below 100%. And so that also is a year that we passed a levy. And both those levies were for 3.5 mils, and the reduction factors are identical as a result of what transpired there, because they work both ways. So when they were pulled back, in 2011, we got the full value. When we reappraise, if we pass a levy and we go into and it's year reappraisal, we never get the full amount of the voted millage. It's just the way it works. So you see those 3 stair steps are identical to the ones above. And I don't know, John, if you can get both those in the same frame without it going, but you can see the relationship between the two. You can scroll. So it's an inverse relationship, and that's what I was showing you. I've got another graph that'll show it a little bit better. So I'll come back to that when we go to the footnotes. So scroll down, the next class of property is public utility personal property. And I do want to say that the reason for that above the real estate was because of House Bill 920 in 1976, and no one voted. Taxpayers did not vote for that. But that's the way it worked. As a result, there was a young man named George Voitovich, but that's another story. So this is the second line down, which is tangible personal property. Tangible personal property used to be, when you see on the left, the reason it's so high, and this is all of our funds that collect these property taxes, it was high because we used to receive franchise tax, inventory tax, energy dereg tax, kilowatt tax, tangible personal property. And in 1999, Governor Taft put a bipartisan committee together to determine why businesses weren't moving to Ohio, and they determined that we were taxing them too much. So without a vote of the taxpayers, they eliminated all of those, and the only one left is public utility personal property. They phased them out, and then they had a reimbursement. They phased that out, and they replaced it with a joke called the cat tax. And the cat tax is a 6-line tax return form that doesn't kick in until you've made over $1 million. And it was supposed to replace or help supplement that, fund it, but it never did. And it was in a perfect storm during a major recession that we had. So that is the second line item. And the growth in that are the pipelines and the infrastructure of the utility companies. So that's Duke and Dayton Power and Electric. So I think is that the last one? Oh, and so the other line item I wanted to mention was the state. We did this last month, but I just wanted to show that we identified what we're getting from the state finally in March. And the gray is the increase in state funding. It's a net increase, the result of a decrease in the amount of money they were charging us on our payment, our SFPR. And the difference between that. So if you reduce expenditures, it improves the bottom line. They reduced expenditures by significantly more than revenues. So the district realized a $770,000 change to the bottom line. And the growth going across there, we're losing restricted money because as they phase this in, and I'll show you that next, as they phase it in, we become a wealthier district per student, but we are still getting transportation in unrestricted on top of that because they're determined to fund districts at 50% of whatever calculation they came up with. And it does benefit Loveland. If we could have one more, this is the phase in of the guarantee. And as we've talked about last month, that is a liability because we're only guaranteed through biennium. Biennium ends in 2023. This model doesn't get fully phased in for 6 years. So Patterson and Cupp are no longer going to be in office when this thing goes away. So hopefully the amount of work they put into it, they continue to fund the guarantee because the guarantee is taking away from funding for other districts that are not Loveland. So that's all I have on this.
Rob, just I think it's a really important point. It's a little complicated, but an important point that the state funding formula is, the guarantee is critical to us. It's a significant number to us. It's part of what the current funding model is built on, but there's one problem, and that's that the state's budget doesn't go as long as these guarantees go.
Or our 5-year forecast.
And therefore, if there's a change of heart at the legislature, we're at risk on that part of our revenue stream.
We are. Footnotes.
Part of the revenue stream
Footnotes.
increases significantly year over year in the next 4 years.
It is projected to do that. So when they put the model together, they put it together assuming that the funding would be available.
And if it is, everything's okay. If it's not, then we have a hole that we have to worry about.
Yes, we have a liability, absolutely.
And am I right, Rob, in that after 2026, they don't have a plan?
I'm not sure after 2023 that there's a plan because everyone is newly elected and they're making decisions based upon their constituents. We're in the top 40 wealthiest districts per pupil, and those are two different inverse things. One is property values going up, the other is less students. So as that happens, it doesn't help. I think I showed you at one point in time, it would take hundreds, I think it was 938 students to be able to get to the formula. Wasn't that what it was?
Yeah.
Yeah, which changes, goes up every year. So right now we're being funded at about 3,000 per student on the guarantee. When we get to 2025, we'll be funded on the projection at $341 per student if we were a formula district. But because we're a guaranteed district, we hope to continue to receive the 3,000 per student, which is a lot. Just wait. Oh, it was in the email and it's on board docs. Okay.
What are, they're smaller line items, but what are the bottom? You basically went through the top 1, 2,
Yeah.
3, 4, 5
So-
of the revenue lines. What are those, the property tax allocation and all other revenues?
So property tax allocation is another one of those things that back in 1971, I think they had a little too much eggnog at Christmas time, and they decided that they were going to eliminate 12.5%. It was 10% homestead, 2.5%, 10% rollback, 2.5% homestead, and they passed it and they were sued. The legislators were sued, and so they had to reimburse that to school districts. All of this time, since 1971, up until I think it was 2005, 2012, they were reimbursing the school districts for the benefit that they exempted 12.5% for homeowners. It was a wonderful thing for homeowners, but they didn't think about how to replace that for school districts. So Governor Kasich got in there, and he had a young man by the name of Keene, who was his budget director, and he didn't like reimbursing anything. And so in addition to not reimbursing, thank you, the school districts for the phase out of all of the business taxes, they took this away just like that. And that 12.5% fell back on the homeowner. So when we passed the 2014 levy, it was the first time the homeowner got the full $35 per 100,000 per mill, as opposed to the calculation that we used to have to do. And it's the only one, but everything going forward is that way. But that one, that was House Bill 59, and it saw like 5 days of the light of day, and it was part of a budget bill, not the way you do governmental work, I don't think. And it was, again, not by the vote of the people, but that money went away and reverted back to homeowners and left us to try to explain it to them, because that had always been in play. Well, I mean, since 1971.
But that number that's on there. That number that's on there is the reimbursement of the levies that are on to which that 12.5% applies.
And I would say for the time being, yes.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, when they did it once, it's, so right now that money is still being reimbursed, and hopefully that won't go away. If it does, I think they'll probably make, all school districts would make a loud noise. It's a lot of money. And the one below that, all of the revenues, that one, that had this one line item called interest, which we haven't seen for a long time. It might come back. It might be the benefit of everything that we're looking at now. It's the antithesis of, but it's also tuition and fees and things like that that are immaterial and all lumped together. So with that, I'm just going to touch real quickly on the ones we just looked at, and I'm sorry, I hope I'm not boring you. If we could just go down to the chart that's on the real estate one, on down, it's underneath the bars. There we go. There, that little chart below the bars. If it's possible to blow that one up, not that one, the one below it. One more. This shows, well, sorry, maybe two more. There's a chart down there somewhere. There we go. It's below these bars. You can see the leveled off. You can see where there's no additional, but keep going, John. It's numbers I'm looking for. Little there, that box right there. This shows the valuation, and the valuation changes, shows the rates and the changes to the rates. So you see the value go up and you see the rate go down. And that change is affected by the reduction factors that are part of the calculation for our millage. And you can see the millage going from 3.86 and so it says 3571 in 2025 as opposed to 3816 in 2020. But where we are right now, we haven't been, we're at, is it 36? That says 3603. We haven't been this low since 2011 in millage. So we haven't captured the growth. And part of that's important because capturing the growth is what the state of Ohio expects us to do with how we are calculated in their minds. And then when they change the funding model, they have to do a guarantee because otherwise they would bankrupt the district. But that's another story. So if we want to slide on down a little bit more, this one shows the tangible personal property. In this chart, the reason I like to look at this one is because, a little further, this chart, you'll see the full voted rate. So the second line down, tangible personal property, is all of the voted millage of the district applied to the valuation. On this line item, when the value goes up, we actually do receive more money. Just like the inside millage, we have 4.56 inside mills that are not reduced. And that little bit of money that we have, it's about $4.5 million overall. Whatever the percentage increase is, we get a little bit of that. So that's the difference between those two types of revenues. And then if we go down a little bit further, unrestricted grants and aid. So go ahead, go down. Restricted grants and aid. This is showing that we're the bars up, actually the blue bars is showing that we're going to receive less of this. And this is the result of the increased valuation per pupil. These are items that are restricted because the Department of Education wants to make sure we're spending money on these things. And because the district is receiving more local funds as a result of our assessed valuation per pupil and less pupils, they're taking that away. Unrestricted, we're receiving our funds from the transportation funds.
Can I get you to define a little better the notion of capturing the growth? Are you talking about capturing the growth of property value? Or are you talking about capturing the growth of wealth of the district, income of the district? When you say capture the growth, what is the state expecting us to do?
So we have
What
no
are we actually
inflationary based revenues, no inflationary based revenue stream at all. But everything that we spend is inflationary based. And so House Bill 920 is probably the best way of describing it, because what House Bill 920 was designed to do, anything that was any district that had more than 20 mills being collected were equalized. And so as Kevin had said, once you receive that amount of money for that mills, that's all you'll ever receive from it. There are, I want to say it's 2/3 of the district in the state that are at the floor. When they are at the floor and values go up, they receive all of that revenue.
Right.
Whereas,
Really what I was trying to get to was there's no way for us currently to capture the growth.
no, there's not.
That's what you're saying, because I don't think you finished that statement. You said the state is saying we need to capture the growth, but you didn't complete it with, but there's no way for us to do that. That's what I was asking.
Absent a new levy, yes.
Yes.
Correct, yes.
Thank you.
Thank you. We can move on to expenditures and this will go quicker because everybody
Sorry,
understands.
one more quick thing on that. The restricted grants and aid, you're talking about the going down. So you're saying the assumption is we're having fewer students projecting out into the future.
We have more wealth, calculated wealth. So the state says, well, their values are going up, students are going down per student. Now they're moving up in the state with regards to how much money they need. So DPIA, for example, we don't get a lot of that. And there's a lot of that money out there now because they're trying to shift the money. Well, if House Bill 920 hadn't happened, that we wouldn't be shifting this much money because we've made poor districts poor and richer districts richer because wealthy districts pass levies, poor districts do not. And so we've created more of a disparity in the state of Ohio. And there was a study that was done by the Institute of Howard Fleeter, where the 25-year period of time after that bill was passed, if they had not passed that bill, the same amount, it was speculated that the same amount of money would have been collected, but it would have been more evenly distributed to districts in the state of Ohio because they wouldn't have had to pass a levy. So all the levies that were passed by districts that were more affluent. And it really created a disparity as a result of House Bill 920. So it was an unintended consequence. So sorry, I didn't mean to include that in all this. So now we're down to expenditures, and I'll go through this fairly quickly. I think, just scroll on down till we get to, I think it's 3.010. That's it right there, personnel services. So personnel services, these are salaries, and salaries, I mean, we're a service industry, and as such, we compete with every other school district in the geographic area. Typically, these are a continual staircase going upwards. The reason that 2021 goes down is because of ESSER funds. There was a $1.4 million fluctuation in this as a result of those funds being paid for out of that grant and then coming back in 2022. These amounts going across reflect approximately just under 4% overall average and that's based upon past trend data. And I don't think there's anything else here. The ability for this to impact our bottom line is huge because the thing that's different about these times right now, and this is also for purchase services, is and also the health industry, is that their jobs are there. There's just nobody filling them. And that's just I don't think I've ever seen that in my lifetime. And that's a concern because that means that it's going to cost a lot more to get people to do the jobs if we're able to find them. If we go down to benefits, benefits is made up of retirement systems and insurances predominantly. And with insurance, I've always budgeted 8%. That's exactly what it came in as. And our insurance increases happen July 1, even though enrollment is January 1. And I asked why. So I think we might address that at some point in time in the future. It's the consortium. So we're in a consortium that the law of large numbers applies. It's been there. I think Loveland was a charter member, and I think it's been in place since the early 90s, late 80s. And so we benefit as a group from having better rates, of having the law of large numbers, and having stop loss in place. But the number this year is 8%. So that's usually what we use. Some years it could be 10, some years it could be 2, but 8 seems to be a pretty steady, 7 or 8% seems to be pretty steady. And again, a service industry that's relies upon people. So there's going to be an upward push on those rates. The STRS and SCRS, which are the retirement systems, are a factor of the salaries above for the employer share, not the employee share. When we scroll down to services, services are typically up, but the down there in 2022 is a result of the $1.2 million reduction in what the state was taking out of the $500,000 they were giving us. And so we see a little drop there. Thank you very much. It's nice not to see that. That's the scholarships and open enrollment out. So that's a big number. And then of course the increase there, I will just say that we have in this, this is gas and electric. And so when I first was looking at this, I'm thinking, oh my gosh, because gas and electric has gone up. But fortunately, our business manager, John Ames, has maintained a discipline of ensuring that we go out every year and evaluate years going forward. Because in years where there's not a lot of difference, we may not save a lot of money, but the difference is between what it actually would have cost if we hadn't done anything and what we paid, which is just a smidgen. Right now, the other side of it is if you didn't do that, now it's wide open to the ceiling. And it's a big number right now. I think it's like, would you say $8 square? And so gas and electric has been mitigated because of John's discipline, and we're out till 2025. So that is fantastic for us because that really was the biggest liability. And John's done a great job of taking care of us. So those, I did a 5, 4, 3, 2 on those going forward. because we do have a little bit of exposure, just like 10% or something like that, because you don't want to buy more than 100% of what you need. And that's out there far enough that we can still do that if we want to, when we get out a little further, if we get better. So then materials and supplies, the big number down there is gasoline. So fuel, and I used the Bureau of Labor Statistics, and fuel was the biggest number on the page. Everything else in supplies and material was still double digits: food, clothing, tires, transportation, those kinds of things. And so in this category, this is where we would, like, for example, reimburse our employees for driving someplace. We're not increasing the amount of professional development, but certainly gas being where it is, we're going to, I used 5% across the board. We're going to have higher expenditures for any driving that our folks do, whether it's building to building or for professional development or whatever. Gasoline this year, I had to add $40,000 just to get us out of here, out of the year. And because it had only been going on for a few months. But I put 40% down for 2023 because we haven't seen it top out yet. We're still seeing Bureau of Labor statistic numbers going up year-over-year averages, and we've only been seeing this for about 2-3 months. So I think that by itself is as conservative as I got. Everything else I tried to keep and maintain mostly the same. The one line item that I did add, because I like to have it in there, and you're going to have to scroll down quite a bit here, John, is a contingency. And this is something that there's just going to be one thing, one bar sticking up. This is something that, there we go. I haven't seen here in the past, but I've done it everywhere else I've been. And that is 3% of the expenditures that we're projecting for next year. It is only in 2023. We hope not to spend it, but it is the white line before you hit the guardrail and go over the side. It is a means for us to be able to anticipate things that right now we might not be able to do. COVID, the recession, war in Ukraine, the things that you just can't plan on. This is what we have to bank on if we need to. And we would not spend it out of here. We would take it up to other line items in the body of the forecast and in the body of the financials in order to spend it. But that is our safety net. And 3% isn't material to a $52 million budget, but I think it's imperative that we do have it. So with that, I will take questions, but I just wanted to close with this. And also contingency is something that OASBA, OSBA, GFOA, and the EPA are very supportive of for obvious reasons, planning. I don't think it's being too conservative, but the forecast and assumptions were discussed by the Finance Committee, by me and the superintendent. And in that conversation, it was decided that we need to have a discussion with the entire board to discuss the potential of levy timing and millage at the June 6th work session. Between now and then, I've been asked to provide some additional information and data to help with that discussion with the Finance Committee, and so that we can share it with this board, and this board can express what their concerns and thoughts and preferences are with regards to all of that.
Questions?
So, Rob, again, just to make sure that we bring the board and the public along with us on this. You've gone through this process of building a forecast, a lot of history, and those are facts. That's what we spent. And then once you get past history, you have to enter into some educated guesswork about what's going to happen in the future. On the revenue side, that's pretty easy because it's relatively fixed. We get the same amount of cash coming in pretty much regardless year over year, unless something like an ESSER shows up.
Right.
For the most part, unless we do a levy, et cetera. So that part of it is fixed. The expenditures, as I've understood it, is largely built on the status quo. We're not hiring a bunch of new people. We're not instituting a bunch of new programs. We're not reinstituting high school busing in this forecast and any number of different things. Mm-hmm. But for doing the same thing, it tends to cost more to do the same thing as you go forward in time. And that this year in particular, in the 23 fiscal year, is influenced by all this heavy inflationary stuff that we're seeing, and you're making some guesses about, and that's all anybody can really do at this juncture, because you really don't know how long inflation is going to last and to what degree we're going to experience it. There are things like new contracts, new labor contracts that are still kind of filtering into our expenses, but you're making some guesses about what's going to happen with the expenditures around labor. You've got a pretty good insight into what's happening in benefits. Those are substantial numbers, and you're seeing forecasts of those from other people. So all of that blends together into best guess at this point in time of what our expenditures are going to look like over the next several years. And as with anything, the closer you get to spending the money, the more accurate you get in forecasting it.
I
But when
find
you're
that
out 5 years, you got to allow yourself a little bit of give. And this package that you put together for us tonight blends both of those together. And there's one sheet, it's page 22, that I think is real helpful. It's a 5-year forecast summarized really on one sheet. And the important part of this is that you are forecasting what effectively happens to the cash balance at the end of each of these fiscal years. Earlier tonight, you shared the monthly financial reports for the district, and we had $28 million sitting on hand at that point. That 28 million goes up and down depending on whether we have revenues coming in and expenses going out. So don't get excited about 28 million, but at the end of the year, that 28 million on this forecast turns into 14.7 million. And based on the projected revenue coming in through tax receipts and expenses going out, influenced by all the things that you've talked about tonight, that 14.7 at the end of fiscal 23 goes to 11.1. And at the end of 24 goes to about 7.5. And then at the end of 25, it goes to 2.4. And that's ending, as I said, during the course of the year, we have a lot of ups and downs. And on any given month, we've got to be able to pay our bills to the tune of maybe $5 million or so in any given month. So there is a point in here where if we don't do something, probably from a revenue perspective, if we don't do something, we will hit the point where there's not enough cash in the bank to pay people, pay our bills, pay human beings. So it gets to be a very serious situation at some point, and part of the value of these forecasts is that we get to see potentially when that happens, to what degree it happens, and gives us an opportunity to talk through strategies to deal with it. And I think that's the discussion for June that we need to have. Eric and I have asked Rob to do some more scenarios and simulations to more finely identify what happens to cash balances during the course of the year based on, not doing anything, putting a levy in at varying points in time of varying amounts. So you can start to see the impact of all this. But this is a reasonably complex subject, and it's an important one for the district and for the community. And I think it's, the data is suggesting that you can see the problem coming in the next year or so.
Kevin,
Go ahead.
let me just pile on to
Yep.
that, because to me, one of the scary budgetary points becomes when you flip from a positive revenue expense line to a negative revenue expense line, meaning that you just have to work that much harder to dig yourself out of a hole just to get back to even. And on this forecast, we become negative in fiscal year 23 to the tune of $3.6 million.
Meaning we're spending more than we're taking in.
And then just to get back to even, you have to come up with $3.6 million worth of revenue.
And it's assuming we're not doing anything incremental it's just the relentless impact of inflationary increases drives us to be spending more than we're taking in.
And I think one of the other things that's always good to talk about in this district in particular is that we have a very high tax base on residential property, and there's no way around that. 60% of our tax base comes from residential real estate. 80% of our expenses is salary and benefits. There's no way around the fact that not having the revenue means bodies leave the building. And Mike's pointed out the tremendous numbers of FTEs that we've lost in the past few years for that exact reason. And we don't have the leeway to let that happen again.
What I look at, and thank you, Mr. Giuffre, Rob and I have many discussions like this, and I try and break it down to it so it's digestible for me. But I go straight to revenues and expenditures. In my mind as a math guy, when I see my expenditures are higher than my revenues, I am not looking to add anything. I am looking to see how can I get it back to where my revenues are greater than my expenditures. And to the point Eric just mentioned, a few years back, there was an FTE reduction of about 50. And so, and that is not replaced. And I think you've experienced me long enough this year that I watch FTE pretty close. Garth and I watch FTEs pretty close. Do I feel at the end of the strategic vision that there needs to be additions? I think that's to be seen throughout the next year to see where are we going with the strategic vision. It may mean we want one, I'm just going to use an example, one mental health expert, okay? If my expenditures are higher than my revenues, and the discussion Rob just had where the cash balance is going to go exponentially at some point, I am not comfortable doing that. I don't feel that that is prudent by any means to add expenditures when expenditures are above revenues. And so that's how I try and make it digestible in my world. I will always look at the FTE creep. And I've said that from day one. When there were 50 FTE reductions, if we can service and provide the service for our kids with the same amount of FTEs that we have right now, then that's what we need to do for our community. But if our community is saying, somebody brought up high school busing or mental health, we need to have discussions. And right now, that's pretty difficult. The board has done a great job. When I look at the budget, ESSER has helped. Where we are right now, we're in a very good position because of all of that. We need to be prudent about how we're moving forward.
So, when I think about this, my background is in the commercial world, and you don't get to print money in the commercial world. You got to get people to pay you money. And if you don't have enough money coming in, you have to manage what you're paying out. In this environment, our ability to influence what I would call a top line in a business setting, the income line in a business setting, is really effectively only about things like levies. Occasionally, we get a gift like ESSER that we weren't expecting. And I think in our case, we were extremely careful about using it for things that mattered to kids and keeping the district alive.
And not to interrupt, but yes, 100%. How the ESSER funds were used have allowed us to be where we are right now. And that is, that can't be lost, that was done in a very, very prudent way.
Right. And I would say, from a business perspective, the board started to address spending actually, months before Eric and I came on the board, and we've all together continued the process of trying to tighten it down as much as possible to make the revenue flow that we're fixed on last as long as we possibly can. You can save more money. You can, cut programs. You can increase class sizes. You can do a number of different things. But in this environment, you get to the point where you say, do you really want to do some of these things? These are things that have the potential of affecting the primary mission that we're here for, which is to help ensure the future of the young people that are part of this community. And you get to the point where, you can only cut so much and not start to really impact the delivery of the mission that we've got. My sense is that the forecast is also forecasting that choice. It's not something we have to decide today, but you can see it coming for sure. And we're going to have some rough decisions to make if we're to commit to the fulfillment of the mission of the kids' futures here. We're going to run out of room to do it with the money that we have coming in. And we're going to have that hard conversation about can we work with our community to start to open up a discussion and find new revenue sources, different kinds of levies, whatever it might take. But it's coming, I think, is the point I've derived from all the data that you guys have shared.
Yeah, I think in going through the strategic visioning, you hear a lot of different opinions, obviously. But I think what I have found about this community is they love their schools, they love their kids, they want to take care of their kids. It's incumbent upon me to make sure we're fiscally sound. As Eric said, our taxpayers do have a pretty heavy burden in this district due to the way the state funding is set up. And I've had state legislators in to try and discuss that. But at the end of the day, you can't admire the problem. You have to do what's good for kids and what's best for kids and still do it so that it's reasonable in regards to the ask. And that's part of the discussion too, is
it's a tough,
what is that?
Rob's slide earlier that showed kind of commercial real estate revenue being a tiny slice of ours and residential real estate taxes being the majority of it. I think if you go down to Cincinnati, that flips upside down. They're primarily funded by commercial. If you go to Lakota, I think it's similar over there because they've got a heavy commercial base. Our community doesn't have that. That's just a fact of life. It doesn't have it, and therefore the burden of funding the school district primarily falls on the backs of our homeowners. So it's been understandably a difficult conversation. I don't imagine it gets easier, but I do think it's getting ripe to put it on the table.
In a lot of the legislators, we've had 5 in. We have Brad Wenstrup's coming in Friday, but the one legislator, Tom Brinkman, we had a very good discussion over at the high school. And when I saw the opportunity to talk about state funding, his reaction very quickly was, "Oh yeah, you guys are in a bad spot because you don't have the industry and you're a wealthy district." And he knew right out of the gate, and he recognized that. And so that is what I need to do, and Rob and I, and try and get to the state legislators and try and work that end. But in the meantime, it's doing what's best for kids and the community in a fiscally sound way.
So I think again, this started a while back, and you guys have definitely continued to do, in my opinion, the right thing, which is to manage the business part of it, the financial part of it, like a business, to do it tightly, to do it responsibly. And I think, we, as a result of all that work, we've made this thing last a pretty long time, with 8 years since the last levy. And again, some ESSER money has helped stretch that further, but we could have spent that ESSER money a lot of different ways. And effectively, we tried to make things last even longer. So that's part of the conversation that's around the corner, I think.
As you said, fewer and fewer degrees of flexibility. The more conservative we've been in the way that we've spent our money, it's giving us fewer opportunities for potential for expenditure reductions without significant the educational product of what our kids are able to do through our educational system. So yeah, we're at that point where we either increase revenue or we're going to significantly hurt the educational process at level.
Yeah, and that's a good point. I think sometimes we forget to assess what's been done well. And what's been done well up to this point is with the cuts, with the reductions, our classrooms, we really have done a very good job with class size. If it comes down to where we do have more issues with expenditures versus revenues, that becomes more and more difficult. And that's when it is really starting to affect kids. And I think that's a point you're making. But this district has over the course of the last few years, done a very good job. The ESSER funding, I can't say enough how it has been used wisely to fend off some things. And if it would show up every year, it would be great, but it doesn't.
Yeah, there wasn't anything on that federal line.
Well, unfortunately, it showed up because of COVID and we don't want that to show up every year. So let's be careful what we wish for.
So the finance committee will look at logic, reason, and try to make the decision for the entire board more objective or easier to based upon, because Eric and Kevin are asking me to provide great data points that should help the rest, bring the rest of you along, so that on the 6th, when we come into the room for that part of the discussion, it'll be more overtly obvious where things are.
So let me just be clear, there's a request or a recommendation through the finance committee for Mr. Dufresne, Mr. Broadwater, to have a discussion about a continued discussion about the financial situation and about the parameters of what possibilities are out there for this board. And the proposal for that is for June 6th, which is currently announced as a special meeting to receive the strategic vision. So I'm just talking details here. That means that the meeting needs to be announced.
Be advertised, yes.
With a different makeup. It's also, I believe, announced for 5 o'clock on June 6th. It was a little bit different time that we did because, at least that's what I have on my calendar. Because
the gallery walk, I think, was at 5.
okay, and the board meeting was at
Was at
6.
6, I believe.
Okay, I'm just suggesting what time people need to be here. So currently, is there a presentation planned by the design team for the board?
We're still finishing up what it's going to look like, but there will be a presentation of some sort. Absolutely.
But the gallery walk will be available to both the board and the public, and there will be some explanation there. I'm just trying to think of timing
Right.
for the meeting. So the board will be requested to be here at 5, starting an official meeting at 6.
Correct.
Okay. And then we need to re-advertise if we're adding a subject. My presumption is that we would have that strategic vision discussion and then move into additional discussion. Okay, I just wanted to
Horse before the
confirm.
cart.
Yes.
Right.
All right. Anything else on that? I know there are two more items under this piece of business right now, but right now what's on the table is simply the resolution accepting that 5-year forecast. And just to recount, we do that in November and May, correct? So while there was a lot of discussion for this, this is a requirement that we update the 5-year forecast that will be on the website.
Yes.
All right, anything else? Can we vote on that?
Dr. Schwetchner,
Yes.
Mr. Doherty, Reverend Eiler,
Yes.
Dr. Lorenz,
Yes.
Mrs. Washburn.
Yes.
Motion carried.
Thank you.
We have another item. The next item is to approve a bid for HVAC controls and bipolar ionization unit from the ASA Controls in the amount of $678,000. This project will be funded with ESSER funds. Is there a motion?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
So it's Dr. Swetchnow and Mrs. Washburn. Mr. Ames, no further discuss. We have in your report what this is for. I'm not sure I know what a bipolar ionization unit is,
Clean air.
Yeah, clean air. And
but
the brief summary is that we've been in a year-long process of trying to make sure that we can improve air quality as best we can in all of the schools. The schools that were most in the need of change are the ones on Loveland, Madeira. We had a larger plan to replace a lot of equipment, but for a number of reasons, mostly inflationary and supply chain issues, we can't replace as much equipment as we want. And changing the controls and the, I'll say, roof level or main airflow ability to improve air quality is what we've settled that we have the ability to do right now. And we have the funds to do that through the ESSER program.
Okay.
Is that a fair summary, John?
very good. Thank you. I'm from the old school. When I first started doing school stuff, I remember we had discussions about 2-tube and 4-tube systems. And the one meant that you could change from air conditioning, from heating to air conditioning on a dime. The other meant it was going to take you a while to cool that building down or heat it up. So this is different.
When I got here, I went into John's office and I said, there's coal on the books. He goes, yeah, we heat the school with coal. It's like,
Okay, anyway. Enough reminiscing. It's been fun, but it's getting late.
So just to clarify, we just had a long conversation about what I think of as day-to-day operating expenses. This we categorize differently. These are kind of one-time investments for things that have a long life. And in this case, we're making a decision to take our oldest buildings, I think actually, right? Our oldest buildings and help them last a bit longer. And we've been around and around, I think, on the wisdom of doing that. And I think we've settled on, given all the situation, this is probably still the best thing to do to keep them alive and make them healthier.
And next year, I do plan to continue with ESSER funds for doing the same type of setup for both middle, intermediate, and high school. That I was planning originally for it to be a 3-year process, and I may still keep that way. As you're noticing, there's just not many people to do work, so I hesitate to take on too much at one time. So I may break it out to 2 more years after this, but there will be the same type of plan coming out next year to you.
And just to clarify, Mr. Doherty, you're talking about keeping the buildings alive and healthy,
Yes.
not keeping the children alive and healthy.
They go hand in
Actually,
hand.
but they go hand in hand.
Hand in hand.
Well, I mean, the genesis of this is Eric, many months ago, as we were talking about COVID strategies, getting to the fundamentals of trying to create air quality, which would go beyond COVID and help keep the kids in class more of the year. Really a smart approach to both issues.
Thank you. Any other questions? Mr. Giuffre, can we vote on that one?
Dr. Schwetznow,
Yes.
Ms. Washburn,
Yes.
Mr. Doherty,
Yes.
Reverend Eilert,
Yes.
Dr. Lorenz.
Yes, motion carried. And the final one is to approve a bid for a fire alarm system also at those buildings. Yes, LES. And that is in the amount of $338,476.25. Is there a motion? Mrs. Washburn moves. Is there a second?
Second.
Dr. Swetchnow. Mr. Ames?
Just to let you know, these are the final 3 buildings to have the fire alarm systems upgraded. We've did the high school about 5 years ago. This building probably 2.5, 3 years ago. So once these 3 buildings are all done, then it's not that they're not working, but they just need to have an upgrade to make sure that they function as they need to.
Any questions?
25 cents.
25 cents. I'm too tired to mention it at this. Going to pull a quarter out, but we'll just move on. Can we vote on that, Mr. Giuffre?
Mrs. Washburn.
Yes.
Dr. Schwetznow,
Yes.
Mr. Doherty,
Yes.
Reverend Eilert,
Yes.
Dr. Lorenz.
Yes. Motion carried. Is there any other business that needs to come before this board? If not, is there a motion to adjourn? So moved. Second?
Second.
Okay, Mrs. Washburn, Dr. Swetch now. Can we do all those in?
All in,
Aye.
done.
Motion, meeting adjourned at 9:19.